Okay, we're live. All right, welcome everyone to our Open Midrash. And so this is a time where you can pretty much ask whatever you want to ask, and that'd be fine. We do still want you to come up to the front and get over by the microphone up here for the questions. Rob, you could actually take the mic out and lay it in the stand there. That'll be fine. See if it's on.
It's on.
Okay, good. Excellent. Good. Okay. All right, so the way this is going to work, as people are still filing in, tell you what, after a good, heavy dinner, you got to walk up that hill, catch your breath. Oh, that's true. The sunset did stop a lot of people because the sunset was spectacular. It was magenta and orange and red. It was just beautiful sunset. Rebbetzin and I took a couple of pictures. It was beautiful. Okay, so I know a lot of people stopped to see that. Understandable. All right, so some of you are now just realizing when you came to Sukkot, you hadn't realized that this was a marathon. You should have gotten prepared for it a couple of weeks in advance and start getting in shape for Sukkot. All right, how'd you guys enjoy that session earlier today? It was good? All right. That means I'm going to have to stay up late writing the stuff for the next session on Sunday. No. All right, excellent, excellent. Okay, so here's kind of how this Midrash thing works. Okay, it's set up so that you can ask questions, and we have a couple of ground rules for this. A little bit different than we do for the normal Torah study, because in Torah study we don't have enough time to really kind of go about this way. So you're welcome to ask pretty much anything. I am not obligated to answer anything. No, but really, if you ask something, I do want to open it up for discussion in case anybody maybe wants to chime in or add something or answer a question, I think. So it's really not just a, ask the rabbi session, or stump the rabbi session. Although those can be intriguing and fun. Okay, so here's kind of the ground rules. When you do ask a question, okay, this came up the very first time we ever did this. This is about almost 20 years ago. And a very important point needs to be made. When you come up to make your point, if you have a comment or point to make, we need to first agree what the verse actually does say before you get to decide what you think it means. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because a lot of preachers out there and a lot of people out there say things, well, the verse that says this. Well, it doesn't necessarily say that. You just think that's what it means, so that's what you think it says. Now, it doesn't mean that I disagree with what you think it means. But I'll still stop you first and say, wait a minute, hold on, the verse doesn't actually say that. Okay? This happened to be from Revelation. So of course, Open Midrash, everybody wants to go places I never go, so they go to Revelation. Norma just got excited. Okay. All right? And so it was in Revelation 20, and it was talking about the great white throne judgment. And so the person said, I want to ask you to talk about the great white throne judgment, the judgment of the damned. Hold on, time out. It doesn't say that. Okay? And so that's where we came up with the rule. Now, you're entitled to make a case for why you think a verse means something, and that's fine. But let's first agree to the fact that it says what it says. Okay? Now, some of the verses are designed to need interpretation, for you to piece it together. A lot of the verses, you've kind of learned that over time by listening to me. But in the meantime, just remember that rule. Also, we're going to be highly respectful of each other. Don't be offended by anything anybody says, and especially if it comes from me. And take everything with a grain of sarcastic red yellow, okay? Which is all you're going to get from the microphone anyway. Okay. Is that fair? We good? Okay. All right, so if anybody wants to kind of fill in these seats in the front, you can come on up. If you're on live stream, Rob and Kurt are minding the live stream. Now, live stream people, this is not an opportunity for you to promote your ministry or your beliefs on something. You're not to debate. This is an argument, not an argument, this is a discussion group. And if you're going to discuss, we'll discuss it, we'll post it on the mic, but you're not there online to correct anybody. The only correction should be coming from me or from the two guys administrating it, okay? Because otherwise this can get into all kinds of craziness. Oh, we got something right away?
Yeah, they had asked earlier, I think they were overseas, they couldn't stay, wouldn't be able to be here so they asked if I could ask her later on.
Okay, who's that?
Her name's Andy Dennis.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I said, question. So in the Torah reading earlier today, when we were discussing Moses' seat, I believe that the Pharisees were given Torah from Moses' seat, but also Talmud, so that, I don't know what that word, stage, so that was the stage heavy burden?
Okay, look, the thing is that people have always considered the Talmud to be the heavy burdens. That's not necessarily right or wrong. I mean, you could take it in different ways. I mean, Talmud is not like what you think it is. As a matter of fact, a good almost majority of it is just you watching a bunch of guys argue when they don't even come to a conclusion. They leave it for you to kind of figure things out. Because a lot of people think it's just a lot of oral tradition and oral law, and it tells you do this and don't do that. And there is some of that in there. Okay, but there's a good chunk of it where you hear people arguing about what should be done or not done in a situation, and then they really don't necessarily come to a conclusion. Okay, and so, but something like heavy burden and things like what Yeshua said is really subject to perception, and so we don't know what they're talking about there. Is it an emotional thing where, I mean, look, we're trying to guess what's going on there in Matthew 23. And plus, in Matthew 23, we also end up with the whole call nobody rabbi thing and other things like that. And there's just a bunch of stuff going on in chapter 23 that doesn't, with me anyway, it just doesn't seem to be consistent with a lot of other things. All right? And that's the only place you really find it, so I really wouldn't get all that excited about it. And so the least we can do is go to the beginning of the verse of the chapter where he says, when they teach you from that spot, you do what they say. And that was part of what Deuteronomy 17 was talking about to some degree, okay? All right. As far as the heavy burdens, we don't know what that was talking about. You have to understand that the Talmud didn't get written down till after that. Okay, so it didn't exist in written form till after that. And so it's hard to just point fingers at something that didn't even exist yet in any kind of an available form, okay? It wasn't codified till way after this. Neither one of the two. By the way, it's so funny. Well, we'll kind of use this as a way to launch our thing. A lot of people will say things like, well, you know, I'm not into that Talmud stuff, and if you do any Talmud stuff, whatever, I'm against it. I said, well, what do you know about the Talmud? Well, I've read the Talmud. Which one? They go, what? I go, well, which one? The Talmud. Okay, I know. Which one? There are two. There's a Jerusalem Talmud, there's a Babylonian Talmud. Okay? And they were written at different times, quite a number of years apart. Okay? And they're not as comprehensive. Each one the Jerusalem is much smaller than the Babylonian. Okay? So almost everything in the Jerusalem is in the Babylonian to some degree. But they come from different approaches to a certain degree. All right? And so we have these things going on. The Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud, I've got a copy of it. I can lend it to you, but you'd need like a truck. It's 73 books. Okay? So if you picture the hard-covered scriptures, this one? Here we go. Picture 73 of these. Okay, wait, this is the normal size book, okay? So 73 of these. And probably that thick or thicker, okay? So then I'll say again to them, well, which one did you read? What tractate did you read? Well, I read the Talmud. No, you didn't. Did you read Mishnah or Gemara? What? Do you know what those are? No. Okay? And so this is really kind of what's out there. What they did was they saw somebody who was against, in an anti-Semitic way, against the Jewish stuff, and they posted some quote that they thought they understood out of the Talmud, most likely out of context, because after all, it's like case law. If you're a law person, you know that there's things called case law, where there was a case and the judge made a decision and it becomes a quotable case that this was the issue that was at law, this is the arguments that were made, and this is what the judge decided. You get precedent from that. That's a lot of what Talmud is. Here's a law. This is how we came about this Talmudic law. These kind of arguments we made about these different rabbis, about these different things, and this is how we decided something. Okay? All right. And it's written in a very strange way when you look at it. I mean, you have a section in the center. You got a couple of sections that wrap around the center in sort of a concentric, rectangles, as part of the shape of a page. If you don't know what they are, how would you know what you're reading? And probably you really can't fully understand it in a right, comprehensive way if you don't understand Hebrew. Because then again, you have an interpretation, not a translation. Okay? Anyway, so just so we know, and that's kind of my long-winded answer to the person online, or had asked it before they left, is that I don't know exactly what Yeshua was talking about in that verse, but we can understand the first part, which is when they're sitting on Moses' seat, you're supposed to do what they say. Okay, next question. All right, let's start with Selena.
Okay, so the kids and I are reading through the Bible chronologically, sort of, kind of. And they're in Matthew. I'm trying to stay ahead of them. I'm in Acts. And that's kind of the first time I've read it, I think. I've heard random stuff. I came from a background that didn't really teach anything, so that's been helpful for me, learning new things. I had a charismatic friend that thought she could do all the thing in Acts. Anyway. It just seems like there's a bunch of weird stuff going on. And I don't know what kind of...
Wait, you've read other parts of the Bible, though, right?
Yeah, and
lots of weird things going on.
I was thinking about that this morning. I'm like, well, this maybe is not as weird as anything else. But is there, what's going on? There's all these people, and they're doing all this stuff, and I don't know what to do with it. I don't know when...
Nothing. Remember, okay, look, the book of Acts is just, it's a way of giving you, to some degree, Paul's story and his journey a little bit. There are some things going on with the Jerusalem Council, and that are sort of interesting to us. But there's really not any halachic things in there for us today. I mean, one of the only halachic decisions you find in there is the decision to not require people to be circumcised before they actually start coming to hear the word taught.
So what's the point of the book? Why is it there? And when I get to my, reading it to the kids and they ask all these stumper questions. It's a book to just give you a little bit of Paul's story, talk about the early people when they first came in. But you got to remember, when they're coming in the full context of the culture and the time that this is happening. So you're going to read about some of the culturally affected things that they were doing and how they approached things and how they saw things within that context. So it's kind of a window into the days and the lives of some of these people existing at the time after Shavuot. Okay, so they're doing more miracles and stuff just to kind of start the whole thing?
Well, there are signs and wonders that are... What's the point of signs and wonders? Remember, everybody knows what that is?
Strength and faith.
To strengthen belief. Okay? So this is a group of people that to some degree didn't know about Yeshua at all, and the other people absolutely knew who he was because they remembered him from when they had interacted with him on some level. And so those that were excited about him didn't necessarily know if they should be excited about the ones he left behind. And those that didn't know about him didn't know that these guys had any authority or any kind of thing like that. So the signs and wonders helped to bring those groups together to recognize that this was a launching and a continuation, but in some degrees a launching or relaunching of what Yeshua had started. Okay. So the signs and wonders serve a purpose in that initial growth explosion, so to speak, of people.
Okay.
Okay? But really, it's a window into that time. And look, you have some interesting things going on, like the people deciding to form a community. They sell all their stuff. They laid it at the feet of the apostles. I I laugh sometimes because people will say, well, we need to get back to first century, how they did things in the first century. Really? Are you really ready for that? Okay? Because people always say, well, the problem is we're not getting back to the way they did things in the first century. Well, in the first century, they sold everything, laid at the feet of the apostles, and they distributed as needed. That's what the book of Acts tells us anyway. Are you ready for that? I'm not suggesting that we need to do that. I'm just saying, but just remember, that a lot of people like to sort of run the mouth a little bit, and they really don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand what it is they're, asking for, because they haven't really read it well enough to understand the details. Do you understand what you're asking for? No, I don't. It's kind of like when the apostles were asking Yeshua, for things like, well, we want to be where you go. We want to do this. They're like, are you able to, take of the cup that I have to take of? Are you able to do the things, do you think you're ready for this? You don't even know what you're asking. All right, next question.
First, I'd like to thank you for the mention that you did Tuesday or Wednesday morning on barriers. Although I guess hard-headed, didn't follow through with your teaching. It didn't input. Injured myself as a result. Your staff knows the details. I won't go into it here. I got two questions. I don't know the verse for the one on John the Baptist. The other one's related to a comment you made this morning on the rainbow tzitzits. If Scripture doesn't want us to add and subtract, and it only mentions one color, blue, why do you say it can only be white and blue?
Okay, wait, let me put the question back on you. Why do you think you can make it other colors?
I guess we have liberty. If God says it must have a cord of blue, why would you be adding white?
No. He says something more specific. He says to dye one of them blue. Okay, you're thinking like modern day, 2019, wherever you live. You could walk over to Michael's, or you can go to any of those Joanne fabrics. You could buy thread any color you want, rainbow colored of every sort in the world, all cheap, all easy to buy. Do you know what it took to dye things back in those days?
Some oyster or something.
Not just some oyster, but it was an expensive process. It was a lengthy process. That's why Lydia, the seller of purple, was a wealthy woman. Okay, this is an expensive deal. And so the pashat, or the simple understanding, would be to read, you are to dye one blue and leave the other ones alone. See, we're thinking Christianized way. We have liberty now. No, you don't. You are free from your sin, because now you know what's right and wrong. He tells you, do this, don't do that, etc. So now you have a way to understand what to do and what not to do. But you don't have liberty to just do whatever you want. So we look to the simplicity of the verse. So what does the verse say? It says to dye one of them blue. Okay? It doesn't say and do whatever you want with the other ones. And we also then can look to our reference manual called the Jewish Community, who's been living this out for 4,000 years. And they've always done white with blue. Now, when they sort of got disconnected from where they got the blue from, they just did white. Okay? And so, no, we don't have the liberty that people think. And that's why I said, whatever you do, just go ahead and only wear white and blue. But you have to remember, in the argument in the verse, okay, excuse me. Let's get to it real quickly here. What am I looking for? Give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. All right. It says here. Okay, well, it does say it says put a blue cord. Okay, so let's just read what it says. Well, this is in this translation. Okay, speak to the children of Israel and tell them to make tzitzit on the corners of their garments throughout their generation, and to put a blue cord in the tzitzit of the corners. And it shall be to you a tzitzit. Now, you can look at the historical writings, you can look at the Jewish community, you can look at everybody. It was always just white with one blue.
Right.
Okay, so, but what happens is we come into this sort of Christianity thought of liberty. Oh, we're free. We have creativity. It's like you ask the average Christian, well, we don't have to keep the Saturday Sabbath. We can worship any day because we have freedom. course, I've challenged every one of those people to tell me, then what day do you worship? Usually none, because they're just being wise guys. Well, I can do it any day, but you're not. So you're being a hypocrite even to your own standards. Okay, so it's not a liberty thing that way. Okay, we have to keep things in the simple, and the simple means what is the most reasonable response to what you see. And the simplest response is that they would dye one blue and leave the rest as just what they were. And the way they would have done it would have been to find the whitest that they could. It wouldn't have been perfect, but then now listen to this imagery. Okay, if you, understand that the blue cord represents what? Messiah. Even the Jews think that the blue cord represents Messiah. It represents the king. It's a kingly color, but it represents Messiah. And by the way, the Jews are now, actually the ones I'm wearing are Orthodox Jewish, just the blue techelet, okay? Probably didn't pick that up on camera, that's okay. But they are starting to wear the blue. They rediscovered, or at least they figured out what they think, at least what they think is where the blue came from. By the way, it's not blue. It's a color called techelet, okay? Techelet is a color, just like aqua or teal or, navy are all different colors of blue. Okay, so techelet is a color, a specific color. And so if you were to picture this beautiful picture, because if the seat are there to remind you to keep the commandments, that's what it says, you're to wear them to remind you to keep the commandments. And we have this blue thread wrapped around this white wool that would have been mostly perfect but blemished in some ways, because they weren't bleaching it necessarily, okay? So it would have had some imperfections in it. How beautiful the picture of you being a somewhat stained, if not clean, person, right? Because when you sin, your sin is washed away, but it may leave a stain. Just like if I poured some sort of a fruit juice or a wine or something on a white shirt, it may leave a stain, but I can't clean it. It'll be cleaned. And yet, we have to be wrapped with Yeshua to be unblemished, so to speak. So the blue around the white actually gives you that imagery. If you have multiple colors, it won't do that, okay? All right, does that answer the question?
I think so. I thought you were going to say, well, out of respect for our brother Judah, that's what they do, and we don't want to offend him.
No, that is part of it. Now, let me go a little further with it. Okay, now we do have, in Genesis, we do have a precedent where it says that, out of Judah will be the scepter, and also from Judah is a lawgiver. In other words, it really has to do with a teacher of the law. So Judah is supposed to be ones that we would look to understand the law. Not to say that they haven't convoluted some things, but that we would understand things. So I think it is certainly reasonable, and if not only reasonable, but wise, that when there's anything that's left ambiguous, it's probably a good idea to figure out, well, what are they doing that might be the way to go? Okay? Now, we should very much not have a dog in the hunt either way. In other words, you should not have an emotional attachment to putting green or blue with orange or different shades of blue. I've seen all kinds of things happening on people's seats. A lot of the ladies like to have different colored sets to match their clothing. It's not a fashion statement. It's not an accessory. Okay? Had somebody once contact me, wanted me to put on my Facebook page or on our website, whatever it was, her products, and it was called Bling Your Fringe. I don't even know if it still exists. I said, I'm sorry, but I think you wear them for a different reason than I do. I don't care if you told me to make them puke brown and green, I'd wear them. Okay? I'm being blunt. I wear them in obedience. I don't really think about whether they match my clothing. Right? It's not an accessory. It's not a fashion statement. It's obedience and a reminder to keep commands. So yes, I think we should also be respectful of Judah. I think that you need to understand that if you don't need to do something that would offend your brother, you shouldn't do it. That's scriptural, okay? So if you don't need to make them another color, and let's say you had that liberty, why wouldn't you just make them white with blue so you don't disrespect your brother who thinks it's very important to be white with blue? If it matters to him and doesn't matter to you, why not do it his way? And that's the way we should be with almost all things. If something doesn't matter to you and is really important to somebody else, why not do what they want because it's important to them? Okay? So that's another factor in there. As we learn to esteem others above ourselves. So if it doesn't matter from that point of view. Does that make sense? I would not tell you to only do what doesn't offend Judah. I say Yahweh, that would offend Judah. So it's not about but I think it's important that we can use his name appropriately. I wouldn't use it all the time, just, willy-nilly, but I use it in what I think would be an appropriate amount at appropriate times to show respect for his name, okay? I say creator a lot, so I don't always use the name, but I like to, use it in an appropriate way. The Jewish community wouldn't accept that at all, okay? And so I'm not doing things to avoid offending them in general. I want to avoid offending anybody if possible. Even Paul says, if possible, live at peace with all men. So to that point of view, yes, I would not do it if it would offend my brother, but only because I don't feel we need to do it. Because if you have liberty, that means you don't have to do it either in rainbow colors. Okay? You can choose the path of least offense.
I don't do it in an Orthodox synagogue.
Okay. And again, obviously, this is something that you have done. Now, I've had people get upset with me because they don't just do fashion sense and they don't do all those things. The colors they choose are deeply meaningful to them. I get that. But this isn't about you. It's about him. So it doesn't matter what's meaningful to you. It matters if it's meaningful to him. And if you're putting your emotional issues about the colors first above your brother who may be offended, above all these other things, I think you're making a mistake. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. But good question.
Since there's only one other, can I get another question?
Yeah,
Except
give me
I
a second
don't know
one.
the verse. It's in
That's
one of the
okay.
Gospels.
Yeah.
It's related to Yeshua's comment after John the Baptist had been killed, apparently. And it said, he that is greater, least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than him, which led me to conclude, doesn't John the Baptist make it into the kingdom?
Okay, this is a really good question. How many of you ever had that thought? Wondered about that question? How many of you already heard me answer this? A few of you. Okay. So it's a good question. So here's the thing. Yeshua is trying to give them a perspective comparing human beings with the actual kingdom. Okay, John was great. Yeshua said this was none greater, greatest prophet around. But he said, but even John would be nothing compared to those that, when we're actually in the kingdom. It's a whole nother level. So let's not be focusing on John and the fact that he's dead now and everything else, but focusing on getting in. It doesn't have anything to do with about getting in or not getting in. Okay, John's definitely getting in. That's not the issue. Yeshua said he was among the highest and greatest of the prophets, so to speak. But he's trying to give them a perspective saying, look, you're impressed with John. Stop being impressed with John, the human being. Okay? Even as great as John was, so much greater will we be in the kingdom. But you're all impressed with John, the human being. Does that make some sense?
Yeah, different.
It's just a whole different perspective. Right, it's earth versus kingdom. So he's talking about you're impressed with something in the below. That's nothing compared to what's in the above. Okay. Even the least in the above is so much better than anything on the below.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay? It was not anything to disrespect John whatsoever. John gets in. Okay? Not a problem. He says, among prophets, it was none greater. All right? Among men. He was very complimentary about John. All right, who's next? Ali. And if you have a comment, or question to continue on anybody else's question, you're welcome to come up and say you would like to get involved in whatever somebody already asked, and that's certainly welcome. It's a little bit tougher, I know, with the microphone being up at the front, but that's okay.
Hey, Rabbi.
Hi, Ali.
It's good to see you today. Thank you for taking the time to answer our questions tonight and to just open up anything that we might ask. I have a question on the topic of keeping Shabbat in a household mixed with the covenanted and the uncovenanted. Should I be dropping off someone to work on the Shabbat? And if yes, how can I balance, I guess.
You don't have to get to the if yes, it's no.
Okay. Well, all right, then. So
it makes it easier. Don't have to worry about your wording of the if yes, because it's no.
So this person doesn't really have a shred of red. His bosses want him to work on Shabbat, and he's not really doing anything about it.
Okay, hold on.
And
this is your problem. Why?
Well, I want to love my brother. Should I be doing it in this fashion?
Well, are you loving your brother by enabling them or by trying to help them not deal with their stuff? Your family member is primarily responsible for all aspects of their life. Okay? They can get a license, they can learn to drive, these are all adults, adult age. I mean, old enough to drive, right? All right, so
Yeah.
why do they need you to drive them?
Yeah, as I said, he's not really doing anything about it.
Okay,
And-
so then you're not helping him by helping him. He needs to figure out how to do something about it. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. Listen, this is a message to all of you. Hold on, wait. My little cushion that I stand on here that make things a little softer was out of whack. Okay, here's an important lesson for everybody. Okay, very important. You need to remember this very clearly. You don't always help by rescuing. That's good, thank you. Somebody decided to clap. All right? That's not to say you shouldn't rescue occasionally, because some people need rescuing. Okay, but when something is a consistent habitual problem, okay, rescue people in an emergency, especially when it's something that they normally do handle, but now all of a sudden they can't for some reason. But if this is something, as Ali said, they're doing nothing about, rescuing them doesn't help them at all. They're going to have to learn, what happens, Ali, when you move here and you're not there? They need to learn that before you leave and before your parents leave, you know. And that's something, because they're the ones that aren't coming. They're going to have to figure out how to take care of themselves. Oh, but they don't motivate them. That's not your problem. That's their lifelong problem. They need to figure out, or they're going to be miserable and they're going to have all kinds of issues. You guys can't rescue them forever, all right? Better now when they're not married and they don't have all kinds of responsibilities and they don't own their own houses and everything and have to pay all those bills. Better now to have them suffer through and figure out and wake up and pick themselves up by their own bootstraps, so to speak, than to figure it out later when they've got all this, responsibility and all kinds of real big problems. Okay, great question. All right, next person. Wait, go ahead, live stream.
All right, some clarification. So in this format, okay,
I'm sorry, no, the live stream's going to go first. You go ahead and sit down again. Wait, yeah. Sorry, I called you up prematurely. There's somebody over here first. Go ahead.
all right, so clarifying the format of this event, we got people that are asking questions and others online answering it. I'm guessing the intent was really it should be coming from you and the
Yeah,
microphone. up
nobody
here.
online should be answering anybody's question. Okay? If a question is being discussed out loud, even from online, then you can type in things that I can read out loud so it's part of the discussion if you have input or feedback. But nobody online should be answering anybody's question. If that is not respected, you will be put either in timeout or booted or whatever they could do online. Because that's not what this is about. This isn't, okay, unless you want to first send your resume and your qualifications to be answering people's questions, stop it, knock it off, all right? And some of you online just got all offended. I'm sorry, but that's not the format of the group. You're going to have to learn respect for that. I started at the beginning. I said, this isn't a format for you to promote whatever you know about everything, okay? Now, if somebody brings up, say, the seat question, and somebody online wanted to chime in with their opinion about it, then it's possible that we could then have that. It all has to be coming out here where I can tell yay or nay if I agree with it, okay? So if people are answering questions online that I don't know what they're saying, I can't agree or don't agree with it. And that's kind of the filter. I'm the teacher for this group, which means I have the final say as to whether or not it's something this ministry agrees with or not. That doesn't mean you have to agree with me, but I have the final say of whether or not it's coming forth as something I would agree with. Because people online might not know who the person typing in is and do they represent the ministry and all that kind of stuff. Is that fair? All right. Rob?
All right, I have a follow-on for the zeet. Then somebody had a question, says, where does leaving the blue cord of the zeet longer come from?
Okay, the blue cord being longer just makes it more visible, I think, is part of the problem. They want to make sure that it's hanging there where you can see it. It's a tradition, again, to help bring more meaning to the tzitzit. But this way you can see it. It stands out a little bit, so it's longer. It's there. I mean, all of this is tradition, so it's not from the Scripture from that point of view. Look, the Scripture doesn't tell us how to... I'll give you another thing that, the person that asked the tzitzit question originally. How do we tie them? Well, almost everybody ties them the way the Jews do, no matter what colors you use. Why? Because it doesn't tell us how to tie them. It doesn't tell us how many strings either, by the way. Doesn't tell us anything except make one cord blue. So how do we know what to do? I don't know. See, we are very disrespectful, I think, of our older brothers who actually have been doing this a long time. And I'm not saying the Jewish community doesn't make mistakes, okay? But we tend to be very disrespectful of their understanding of things. And they've been studying this in depths of levels. I don't mean like going deep, but I mean they've been studying it so intensely for so long in ways that you can't even imagine. That doesn't make them right, by the way, but it means that they may know something you don't know. We should probably give that some respect before we just run off and think we're smart because we've been doing this for 5 minutes. They've been doing this for 4,000 years. What makes you so smart compared to them? Well, they reject Messiah. Okay, I get that. But you know what? Can you blame them? Okay, most of them were not. How many of them actually lived through what happened after Jerusalem fell? And then they got scattered. And then the only Messiah they know is the Jesus-named Messiah that was used to kill them and attack them and to force them to convert it, threat of death and torture and all this other stuff. That's the only Messiah they know. Look, you got to understand, Christianity in the early beginnings of it was like today's radical Islam. So you guys are all upset about ISIS. ISIS, go look at the, Inquisition. They could teach ISIS a thing or two. That was all Christian. They took torture and everything else to the highest level that's ever been on this planet. And so you blame them for not wanting to get excited about the Messiah as presented through Christianity? Oh, but I tell them his name is Yeshua. They just think you're trying to sneak Jesus in with a different name. Oh, good, you found a Hebrew name for him. That doesn't change anything in their heads. So you can't blame them for that stuff. Remember, none come unless the Father draws. So you still got to open up their eyes and their ears, just like with you. But on the other hand, when it comes to the Torah, let's not disrespect them so much. They know some stuff. Look, I don't know if it's how to say this in the right way, but there might be something to the reason I'm the teacher, but I'm also from a Jewish background. A different mindset, a different cultural background. I didn't go through mainstream Christianity. Okay? It gives me a different perspective. And according to Scripture, the teaching should be done by Judah. I mean, that's what it says. A teacher, a lawgiver, will never stop coming from between. Okay? That's in, where is that anyway? In Genesis 49:10. The scepter shall not turn aside from Yehudah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes, and to him is the obedience of the people. Okay? A lawgiver. And so you have to understand that this is talking about those who understand, like a teacher of the law. And so the Jews are who else survived through all of the mess, all the way going back to the beginning, but the Jews? Nobody. That's who survived. And they've maintained for you the text called the Tanakh, so that you could have an understanding of what led to Matthew chapter 1. And they paid the heaviest of prices. Yet there's still rampant anti-Semitism in those calling themselves the body. I mean, rampant anti-Semitism. Well, that's Jewish stuff. I have people get upset because they walk in and we're doing liturgy. What in the world do you think Yeshua did every Saturday when he went to synagogue? Your Messiah was born Jewish. He lived his whole life as a Jew. He died a Jew. Guess what he's coming back as? A Jew. I've met a few people that really did not know he was Jewish. They are so disconnected in a Christian mindset. No, he wasn't. He was Christian. Any of you heard that? I'm not making this stuff up. And so we should have a respect for them. That doesn't mean they didn't make mistakes and that they don't make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. We get that, all right? But on the other hand, all of a sudden I'm Tevye. But on the other hand, when he starts doing this stuff, I realize he's missing a coin. He just needs a coin. When he's doing that, on the other hand, he needs a coin. And some of you are wondering, does he have his coin? Of course I do. It's right here. Okay. Now, next question. Okay, so back over to here. The microphone's on the stand.
Okay. I'm asking this for somebody else.
I've heard that before.
Yes.
No, okay.
No, really. I'm asking
I
this
believe
for
you. I believe you.
So,
I'm going to answer this for somebody else, too.
that's right. They wanted some clarification on the real good news. Like the difference, like when you've been steeped in Christianity, the good news is one thing, and then when you come over toward this side, it's different.
Okay.
Okay?
That's a
Thank
good
you.
question. And actually, it's really not a joke when I said I'm going to answer for someone. If you read the Talmud, what you'll find out is that almost every rabbi that writes in there says that they were speaking on behalf of their rabbi, whoever that was. Rabbi so-and-so, in the name of Rabbi so-and-so, said such and such. Anyway, Yeshua did that too, by the way. He says, I speak in the name of the Father. I speak in his authority. I'm speaking because of what he said. All right, so it gives you the lineage. So when they're speaking in that authority and that lineage. Okay? Now, so the question is about the good news. I'm not coming from a Christian background, so I'm assuming that mostly the good news that they say is the good news about Messiah having died, been resurrected, and sitting at the right hand, that kind of thing. Which, by the way, is extremely good news. All right? Now, for the dispersion and the apostles that were sent out, the disciples sent out to preach the good news, okay, and to disciple the nations, the good news was absolutely that, but a whole lot more. You got to remember that the scattered Israelites were all waiting to hear the good news that Messiah had come. They're also waiting so just the idea that Messiah had come was good news. They're also waiting to hear that the restoration or regathering might begin. In other words, that their punishment in isolation will be coming close to an end. All right, that there would be a reconciliation, a restoration of the scattered Israelites. And so that was the good news. Okay, that prophecy was being fulfilled was the good news. So it's not that the good news that Christianity likes to use is not the good news. It's just that it limits it tremendously to what the fullness of it is. Because Christianity is not acknowledging in any way or form that people are waiting. Why did that cut out? Did it cut out? Did you hear that cut out? No? Must be coming through the monitor. I'm hearing it cut out. Okay. But it's not that good news is not the good news, but really is that they're missing completely that there's a prophecy, many prophecies, about the restoration of those that were scattered. And so that, in other words, those that were out in the scattering would now be becoming from lo ami, lo rochama, not my people, not my, no more mercy, but they would become the children of the living Elohim. They'd be recognized again. Okay? So this is the good news. All right. So, because remember, they were sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. They were sent to look for the Israelites. And so if you're going to send them good news is not only going to be something that they weren't expecting, but it would likely be something they've been waiting for. Most of us have huge amounts of anticipation when you're waiting to hear good news on something you know is coming. You want to hear the good news. Like a baby's going to be born. You're waiting for that phone call to find out the baby's been born, to hear that good news. But you already knew it was coming. And you're just waiting for the call, the good news. Or you're waiting on a job offer to see if you got the job. Or you know what's coming, but you're waiting for it. See, Christianity has never thought of it that way. They just, like this brand new thing that you guys are not aware of, we're sharing this news with you and it's good. No, this is what was expected. And they've been waiting a long time for it, centuries. Okay? So that's the difference. Okay, good question. All right, live stream?
Yeah, I got probably some quick ones. Doreen Quinn, tuna, to eat or not to eat?
Yeah, you can eat tuna. Just watch out for the mercury.
From
Or if it's coming from the Pacific over near, Fukushima, watch out for the radiation. I'd rather get Atlantic tuna, thank you.
Marie Bruneau, Exodus 35:3, is warming food on Shabbat a transgression of the law?
Exodus what? I could answer the question without the reference, but I'm curious what reference you gave me.
35:3. It's talking about kindling of the fire.
Oh, okay, that's easy to do. All right. So, first of all, I didn't mention this and I should have. Be prepared for, I may answer a question by sending you to a teaching, okay? So I'm going to still answer the question, but the teaching you need to listen to is the teaching on the Sabbath. I think it's called Shabbat or Sabbath. It's just called Shabbat, okay? And so it's, 3 parts or something? Okay. So listen to that. Now, this kindling a fire thing, okay, it's not talking about just any kind of combustion whatsoever that creates a spark or a flame, which is, by the way, why the Orthodox and the Jews, specifically the Orthodox Jews, won't drive a car. Because after all, it's sparking a flame. You're creating a spark when you start the car. That's not what it's talking about. What it's talking about is that you do not create a work fire, okay? A work fire. And part of the idea of the work fire is that, remember, this is all in a section where it starts talking about, in different parts of it, the building of the tabernacle. Okay, the section starts getting into the details about the building of the tabernacle, right? Don't kill no fire, and then that's in verse 3. And then we're talking about all of the things to gather for the tabernacle in verses 5 through almost 20. Okay, and people are donating materials, and he's trying to make sure they understand that on the Sabbath, though, you're excited and everything, but don't kindle the fire to do work. And the reason I say it this way is because, again, if you were, and again, I have no idea if the people on there were here when we talked about other Shabbat issues earlier this week, but you need to understand, they were in the desert. Anybody been in a desert at night in the winter? It's pretty cold. Okay? And so I can promise you they had fires at night. But they weren't work fires. They weren't cook fires. They weren't doing anything with them. They were just fires for heat. So if those fires went out, you know what they did? They kindled them. Because they could go out. The wind blows in the desert. Could blow the fire right out. A sandstorm could come and knock that fire right out. And so they didn't freeze. And don't think for a second the pillar of fire was doing anything for them, because if it was warming, you got to think the square, it was almost 2 square miles to fit 2 or 3 million people in camp. And that pillar of fire would fry all the people close to it if it was big enough to warm everybody in the whole camp, if you think of the size of the camp. So they weren't being heated by the fire and the pillar of fire. I didn't say the pillar of fire didn't go off with heat. I'm saying it wasn't positioned in a place to heat them. It was positioned in a place where they could see it and follow it. Okay? And so the answer is, first of all, the kindling the fire thing has nothing to do with what most people think it has to do with. So it's not about just lighting a match or whatever happens. Because some of you in your houses have wood stoves to heat your house. It saves you a lot of money on heat, too. What if that fire goes out in the middle of the winter? You start it back up. It can happen. Somehow the fire could just go out. Maybe somehow something happened and the wood burned faster than you thought it would, and it runs out and it goes out. So you can light that back up. Now, the idea of warming your food. Warming your food. Okay, so I'm talking to Israelites. So I got to parse my words carefully, because you guys think you have liberty. Like that guy said. I want to make sure that liberty doesn't get you in trouble. Okay? You really have to understand that I'm going to give you some opinions and guidance from the microphone, but don't take it as license to go through some doors and just expand beyond what I say. We're not to cook anything. Okay, so if something is already cooked, Like if you make it on Friday and you eat it for dinner and you want to eat it again on Saturday and it's just a matter of just warming it up, you can warm it up. You already cooked it. You prepared it. Everything's done. Not a problem. Not in my opinion, okay? Other people can differ. That's fine. So like what my wife used to do for the children when they were younger, to bring to the oneg, which is our fellowship meal after services, she would make a crock pot full of mac and cheese on Friday and put it in the refrigerator. It was cooked. It was done. All she had to do was warm it up a little bit on Shabbat, and it was fine to go. All right? So if you need to, because I knew some people that were grilling burgers on Shabbat. I said, what are you doing? You can't grill stuff on Shabbat. Or people, saying, oh, I look forward to Shabbat. We got eggs and pancakes, and we make this big breakfast because that's not for Shabbat. Okay? It's got to be something you just warm up, and that's fine. By the way, if you have a problem with that, that's fine. You don't have to heat up anything. You can eat cold stuff, fruit, room temperature stuff, that you can just make sandwiches and whatever, salads that are already pre-made. I mean, you can do a lot of things without having to heat anything up. Now, the reason I think warming up is okay, because keeping it cold is okay too, it seems like. Because they didn't have refrigerators either when this was written. You never thought of it that way. If it's okay to keep your food in a refrigerator, then it's okay to just warm it up. But you're not cooking it. If you could eat it without warming it up, then it's probably okay to warm it up. If you could eat it without warming it up, because you just prefer it to be warm, but you could eat it cold, but you could warm it up, then because you could eat cold mac and cheese. You could cold almost anything. It won't taste maybe as good as, something that's meant to be warm. But if it's in a condition and prepared and ready to eat, and all you're doing is raising its temperature enough to make it warm, that's fine. You're not cooking it. Did I answer the question? At least for you guys. All right, good. Wait. That's okay. I'll bring you the mic real quick.
People told me you can't change the state of anything, like you can warm water but not bring it to a boil. Or, if you pre-do your grilled cheese sandwich, then you can warm it because the cheese has been melted and changed from one state to the next.
Okay, I mean, look, that could be something that, maybe something written somewhere by somebody. So, look, it doesn't give us anything more than just cook what you cook, boil what you boil. Now, the boil what you boil handles the water question, the point you made, because you shouldn't bring the water to a boil because it says not to boil things. Okay, boil what you boil, cook what you cook. That's a clear statement, very simple. And so as far as changing the state, you turn off the ice machine in your refrigerator. It's making things from water to ice. It's changing the state on Shabbat, whether you're controlling it or not, etc. So we have to be careful we're not getting into the absurd. Remember, we don't live in the same time they did. We have equipment they didn't have. They did not have any refrigeration or any place to store food where it wouldn't spoil. Okay? So that was not the same as we have today. They didn't have ice. They didn't have a way to heat things up except to put it over a fire. All right? And so leftovers didn't work as good. They tried that with the manna. That didn't go real well. All right. Next question. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. You want a related question? Then come up here so we can get you the mic. If anybody has a related question, you can come up front.
Thank you, Rabbi. Yes, so frozen bagels, they're already cooked. So is it better to put them in the fridge? And will it be okay to warm them up in the oven if they get a little bit crispy, or that would not be a...
I don't know. I'm not against warming up your bread either to a certain degree, but just because, otherwise you have to apply things straight across the board. Okay, so you want to toast something that's already in a state, like I said, if heating it up doesn't change the fact that you could have eaten it without heating it up, you probably could warm it up. Okay? Is that a fair sort of straightforward policy? Okay, if you can eat it without heating it up, warming it up is not a problem. You can eat the bread without heating it up, then heating it up in a toaster is not a problem. Okay, Tony.
Hi, Rabbi. I'm going to ask a question that I asked in a halakha group, just in case anybody online has the same issue that I had.
Okay, is it one that you had since I answered all the other questions?
No.
It's an older one.
Yes.
Okay. Go.
Okay, so is it okay to eat food prepared on the Sabbath by family members who are uncovenanted? That's the one.
You guys came with the tough questions this week. Okay, no. All right, so the question was, and by the way, we have a Marco Polo group for the ladies, and there's a halacha group, and I'm right on top of that group, boy, I'll tell you. About once every 6 months, whether I like it or not, I answer the questions. You have no idea. One time I was in like April answering questions and went back to like October. And some of them like, I got invited to a Christmas party and I don't know what to do. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's already April. I wonder what they did. Okay. And so I try to be more timely than that. I do remember when you asked this question though. All right. So here's the thing. Look. If you're in a house and the rest of the house or enough of the members of the house are not, keeping Shabbat, I wouldn't participate in the stuff that they're doing. I'd have my own food ready, this is my stuff, and take care of what I need to do. I don't think I would be taking advantage of the cooking that's going on in the house and participate in that. And if you're the spouse and your husband wants cooked food, I would say, look, it's one thing if your husband is uncovenanted and you're covenanted and he wants to bring bacon in the house and everything else, that's between you and him, but it's his house, okay? But you can still decide you don't want to allow that in your house either, and you can fight that out with your husband and see where that goes. I don't know. You may have enough leverage in that relationship, maybe you don't. But I would say, look, it's Shabbat, I'm not cooking. Okay? I don't have a problem if you cook. Go ahead. Do what you want. I'm not cooking. If you want me to make you something on Friday that you can heat up on Shabbat, I'll do it. Okay? I'll make you something Friday. You can heat it up. Okay? But I'm not going to cook. Because you have to still walk out your own thing as best you can. Okay? So I'm not going to, as a general policy, I'm not going to eat. If I go to somebody's house and they're cooking on Shabbat, I'm not eating it. I'm not going to. Because then they're going to see you as a hypocrite. All right? Then they're going to see you as a hypocrite. Okay? Now, somebody might say, well, what does it have to do with, like, for example, if we're here and we eat what's made on Shabbat? Remember, we talked about manservant, maidservant, we talked about active commerce, etc. All right? So you come here, they serve cereal, they serve all kinds of things that you could have. All right? And you can handle these things. But just recognize the fact that, again, this is not your house. In that house where you're dealing with your family, you're setting an example to them. You said, I don't do this, I don't do that. Especially, let's say, they do Christmas, you don't. They eat pork, you don't. You've made some lines. You don't want to open any door that's going to make them say to you, well, you seem to be okay eating the food I cooked. All right? So I would take care of myself. Look, I eat very light on Shabbat. I don't even make a big deal. I have a shake. Okay, I just blend up a few things. I'm not cooking. I just take a few things that are already made, just stir them up together real quick and drink it, and that's the end. That's all I eat. And I go to services, and I don't eat anything until Five Guys. Oneg. Actually, usually I don't eat anything until after that. Okay, so I don't eat very much on Shabbat. I just drink a shake and I'm good to go. And the shake, by the way, I could have made by just sticking it in a container and just shaking it up. The blender just makes it a little bit more effective, but I'm not cooking anything. I'm not preparing anything. I'm throwing a few things together, shaking them together, and drinking it. Okay? So I don't, my family eats a really nice breakfast Sunday morning. Okay? Everybody's home. Nobody had to get up for anything. And we can make a nice breakfast. Unless I'm doing meetings, then I have to get up early and run and do a meeting at 10 o'clock with the South Africans or something, okay? But, and that's not to honor Sunday in any way, but it's a day where everybody's together. It's not Shabbat. You can make a big brunch. Eat a good brunch. And do it at home because all the other restaurants are crowded anyway with all the Christians. You're not going to get into Cracker Barrel and Denny's or wherever you want to go on Sunday morning brunch. All right? Okay, who's next? Mark. Wait. You have a comment on this? Okay, is this a different question or the same question?
This is about Shabbat.
Okay, so go ahead. If it's about Shabbat, go ahead.
So if you are using home health and having home health come out to your house, or a nurse or whatever, and they need to come on Shabbat, could you maybe just list some appropriate scenarios for them to come out and some inappropriate scenarios? Like, is there reasons that we wouldn't have them to come out for doing home health?
No, if you've got home health and you're supposed to have somebody there, have them there. But just ask them not to cook you anything on, if they're people that help you with your meals or whatever, just help them understand that you'd like, cereal or sandwiches or something simple, for, because they may not be willing to come and prepare your stuff the day before, put it in the refrigerator and everything else. But you know what? There's no reason you can't eat simply on one day a week. Okay, keep it simple. You can have, some salads already made of some sort, whether it's, you could have you could have an egg salad, you could have a tuna salad, you could have a chicken salad, you could have just, a potato salad, you could have all kinds of salads. And I don't know about you, I like salads. I'm not even talking about like vegetable salads for those of you that are allergic to anything green, I know a few people like that, okay? But, you could have sandwiches, you could have cold cuts ready to go, make a sandwich, you're good to go. So the people that are helping you, just let them know, that's the case. But if you need home care because you can't take care of yourself, then you need home care. Okay? All right, Steve.
All right, I have a question. You mentioned Five Guys. Is it coincidental that there's Five Guys on the back of your coin? Or is
Ooh. I don't know. That's just the YM2I logo, actually. But they seem pretty happy about the fries. That's a very strange basket. It almost looks like a Torah scroll, though. Okay. All right. Anders.
All right, enough eating. My question is about Day of Atonement. So I understand what to do. I understand why we're doing it. But using the scriptures, I have problem defending it. I don't know how to do it because it's saying afflicted. It doesn't say too fast. So I can't defend it. That's my problem.
Okay, so what you need to, that's a good question, and there are some very, okay, I'll be nice. I'm picturing Uncle Bob texting me, be nice, Rabbi, be nice. Okay, all right. Let me see if he did that. Okay, no. All right. He does that during the teaching sometimes, be nice, Rabbi. All right, that's my best friend for you. Okay, so, what was the question? All right. Then with the Day of Atonement, there are some people out there teaching that to afflict yourself, as it talks about in Leviticus, is not talking about fasting. Well, first of all, we have two issues. One is that fasting in scriptures is not clear in most cases if it's talking about anything more than just giving up, food or water, whatever. It doesn't tell you what it is, how long they're doing it. It just calls something a fast, all right? And a lot of people know fasting to be juice fasting, water fasting, all kinds of fasting. The one day that we have when you're dry fasting, no water, no food, is on Yom Kippur. And that day, for those especially who are not used to it, will feel like you're afflicting yourself. And so we look to the Jewish community. They've always understood it to be no food, no water. This is what they do. We're not eating. We're not drinking. And so we have that to look to. Because otherwise, we have no idea what that means to afflict yourself. So I know it's hard to defend. It's only hard to defend if you're not willing to use the Jewish example, if you're not willing to use the idea that it's asking you to do a whole lot more than you were required to do in other fasts. Okay? Hold on, someone told me to look at Zechariah. Okay? Give me 1 second. Yeah, well, that's when it lists all those other fasts, but those fasts are not the same. Well, it's in there, but it's just listing a bunch of fasts there, okay? It's listing the Tisha B'Av fast. It's mentioning the fast of Gedaliah. It's mentioning a bunch of things there, okay? It's talking about the fast of the 4th month, the 5th month, the 7th month, which is obviously Atonement, and the 10th month, etc. So, but they're not fasts the same as Atonement. It's a different type of fasting. But there it is referring to it as a fast. All right? Because the fast of the 7th month would be atonement. So Zechariah 8:19 does give you atonement as a fast. So that should help you with your defending. All right? It's listed there as a fast. Unless you want to come up with another fast during the 7th month. Okay? All right? So this one would be atonement. Does that help? Not really? No. Not really? Sorry. Why? Because it doesn't say it's... What do you mean? What's it doesn't say? The fast of the 7th month is going to be atonement.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's that one. It doesn't mean, because it doesn't say it's a fast in the...
Yeah, but we don't have another fast in the 7th month.
But it doesn't say it's a fast in the chapter. That's my problem. Sure, there is a fast in the 7th month, but it's not commanded. I cannot find the commandment that there is a fast. It's to afflict yourself. But we're making an equation that afflict means fast.
Okay, so here's I'm going to put it a different way. So what will you do instead?
Well, I guess I would go to your verse, 8:2, to humble yourself to that part.
It doesn't say that either. So what does it mean to afflict yourself? It says you got to afflict yourself. What are you going to do?
I guess I would look to 8:2 to humble myself.
But now you're making stuff up.
Yeah, but how do I defend it then? That's my problem.
Well, how do you defend 8:2 is your answer?
I wouldn't tell someone to do it. I don't know. That would be my answer.
No, but the same thing. Again, what if I told you guys as a very reasonable defense? When you don't know, doing what Judah's doing is a great option. Unless, of course, you're anti-Semitic, then it's a lousy option. Okay? But when it talks about, it is a Sabbath of rest to you, and you shall afflict your beings. You got to do something. And it doesn't say anything more than that. So how do you defend it? Because I think a great defense standing on the judgment day is to say, I didn't know what to do, so I looked to my brother Judah. I don't see how that's an unreasonable defense. What other options do you have except to make something else up? You got to do something to afflict yourself, but it's not one of those liberty things you can just figure out, something else you can do. Okay, what do you take some little whips and whip yourself like some of the Jesuits do or whatever? They start whacking themselves. The Catholics. That's what I said, like the Jesuits sort of side of that whole mess. I'm just saying, you got to do something, and you don't have a way to defend it. So, I gave you the two best options to defend it. Zechariah does mention it as a fast, if you want to believe that's what it's talking about. I don't see how you can't figure anything else out. There isn't any other fast for the 7th month. And our Jewish community has done it as a fast. And so I'm comfortable with that. You got something on that? Give Rob the mic.
Something we read today in Deuteronomy, it just kind of stood out. It's in 16, verse 3. Yeah. It says, eat no leavened bread with it. For 7 days you eat unleavened bread with it, bread of affliction.
Well, bread of affliction is not connected with atonement. Bread of affliction is connected with unleavened bread.
But I didn't know if the affliction was, not is doing without something.
No,
it's
but
like
again,
afflicting yourself.
The bread of affliction is to represent the affliction that they had symbolically, as opposed to afflicting yourself. So now we're talking about completely different concepts. We're eating bread to remind us of an affliction that we had as Israelites in Egypt, but we're talking about afflicting your soul, your being, in the verse. Now again, it's an idiomatic phrase for complete fasting. Okay?
Yeah,
Rick?
my question
was...
Wait,
hold on. You got something on this?
What if you can do the dry fasting for several days without any problem?
Everybody can. They just don't know that they can. Dry fasting is not something you can't do for several days. As a matter of fact, you do it for a lot longer than several days.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was something else you could do.
The fact that you can do it doesn't mean that that's not what the verse means. Just because you could do it without it being a big deal. If you do it after a while, you realize you could actually get through it. It's not really afflicting yourself from that point of view. I never have a problem getting through the Day of Atonement, but okay, good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Rick?
Yeah, mine was in reference to...
So the fact that it doesn't actually feel like an affliction at this point doesn't negate that that's what it is. All right, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, my question was, if people have a problem with doing as Judah does when something is not 100% clear in Scripture.
They have a problem doing what Judah does, even if it is 100% clear in Scripture.
Well, the question is, what are we grafted into if we have such a problem with Judah?
That's true. Paul does talk about in Romans 11 that we're grafted into the tree that they're a part of. And they're the visible remnant of that tree. Okay, Becky?
I have a different question. We're going into the holidays, and my work does an end-of-year recap. It's not a holiday party, but we do go to lunch, and with everything else happening, I just want to make sure that I'm above reproach with perception.
Yeah.
So whether or not I should participate in that.
Okay, good question. Okay, first of all, as we come around the corner here to the Christmas time, and so first of all, as that comes around, I don't want to see any of you guys, well, I won't see because I never go on Facebook, but please don't go on Facebook and start mocking people that are doing this stuff. Okay, don't mock them. Just don't do it yourself. Don't participate in that stuff, first of all. So second of all, as a part of that time, there's going to be things that you may run into, like end-of-year parties. Now, an end-of-year party is, well, there's two things that come up at the end of the year that I think are totally okay. One is your end-of-year or quote-unquote Christmas bonus. It has nothing to do with Christmas. It's the business's way of giving you an incentive to work for them and getting an end-of-year bonus. Now, because of the culture, they'll call it either the end-of-year bonus or a Christmas bonus. Take the money, it's okay. It's not, no, I'm not spinning that. I'm saying it's not about Christmas. It's the companies doing it as one of the things that's an incentive that you say, I know at the end of the year I'm going to get a bonus. Okay? They may call it as Christians a Christmas bonus. A lot of companies just call it an end-of-year bonus. And so I wouldn't stress over that. It's not going to say Christmas bonus necessarily on the check, but it might as a way for you knowing that it's not part of your normal salary. That's just the way they're calling it. It doesn't mean you participated in Christmas. It's not a Christmas present. It's a budgeted in part of their maintenance of their staff to keep them wanting to work there. Does that make sense? You got to understand that? Okay. So that's what companies do because, they may have had a part of what they sold you on when they hired you was, hey, we can only pay you this much, but if we do well, we give a bonus at the end of the year. And you think, okay, I don't know that I could really live on my salary, but if I get a decent bonus, this could be okay. And so you start to count on the bonus. It's not participating in Christmas. All right, that's first of all. Now, second of all, end-of-year parties, unless you're going to be doing it, in a very Christmas-themed way, it's just a lunch get-together at a restaurant or whatever for the team or the department you work at, going out for a lunch, that's fine too. Again, you gauge where it's going. If it's going to end up turning into something Christmas-focused, don't go. I mean, you're not going to probably get fired for missing the end-of-year party, okay? That's not a problem. All right, so just throw that out there, and hopefully that answered the question and it makes some sense, okay? Next.
From Pauline Semple, Leviticus 23, verses 42 and 43. All who are native born sounds like a specific group. Are all of us who are covenant considered native?
23 where? 44?
42 through 43.
Yeah, no, look, I don't have the verse off the top of my head, but there are verses that make it clear that once you covenant, you're as if you were native born. Okay, so it talks about the native born, but there are other verses that talk about that once you covenant, you are as a native born. So hopefully that answers that.
All right. Well, this is one I don't even know what it is, but it seems more Jewish related. But Rebecca Roth wants to know, is it true that the word for cassia was actually kayana in Hebrew, and this is why the rabbis in Israel have approved it? It's a spice thing. I think they're trying to do the special mixture they use for the 10 appointment in the temple.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that whole piece. All I know is that if it's something to use for the temple, why are we even trying to think about how to make it? Because the commandment says, don't make it. Okay, you're not allowed to make the special mix for the temple. So don't worry about what they used for it. Don't worry about which the ingredients are. Don't worry about if they got it right or wrong. You need to just not be doing it. Okay, next question.
All right, Jennifer James, Luke 16, verses 19 to 31. Rabbi Steve, please explain the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. Or if you have a teaching that might cover it.
Yeah, it's the Millennium and Kingdom Part 4. That's true, actually. That would be in that teaching. Okay, Norma's really excited. Did you pay her to ask that question? Okay. Look, and I've said this before, there's no big deal, which is why I haven't done the part 4, because it's really not an hour's worth of stuff. Okay? The part that was missing, that I left out of the first 3 parts, that really was in the original teaching like 20 years ago, was simply about the state of the dead. The dead are dead. They're not in heaven, they're not in hell, they're not suffering, they're not basking in the glory strumming a harp. Okay, we have verses I could quote, and it's in the teaching, where the dead know nothing. Okay, it says the nephesh, or the soul that sins, dies. So there you go, I killed the immortal soul. It's not about that. There is a part of you that has all your information on it, it's everything that is about you, that goes back to where it started, which is that breath of life. But now that breath of life has encoded on it everything about you, and it returns to the Father for waiting the resurrection, so that it could be put back in the body and that you can now be still you. Otherwise, there'd be no point in this whole journey if somehow you get resurrected and you're not you. Okay, how that works, I don't know. I'm a human being. I'm not an Elohim. It's like an amoeba figuring out us. We don't understand that stuff. But it's the Catholic Church, after a few hundred years of the death of Yeshua, they came up with, through Dante's Inferno and everything else, this idea of hell and burning and all this other stuff, okay? And so when we look at Lazarus and the rich man, you have to understand that it is a parable. Okay, what does a parable mean? It's not literal. It's trying to teach a specific lesson. Let me compare this to Acts chapter 10. What am I talking about in Acts chapter 10? Okay, Kashru, Peter and the sheet, right? Okay. He had a dream. A bunch of animals, unclean. Eat, kill, or kill, eat. I guess you have to kill it first. That's my Passover question, by the way. Do you generally speaking, by the way, because there are a lot of people out there that are that think the Last Supper was a Passover. Some pretty big name people out there think that. And I always ask a very simple question. Generally speaking, do you eat the animal before or after you kill it? Don't laugh, it's a real question. After. Okay, so can we agree that Messiah was killed and slaughtered at the same time as the lambs for Passover? Well, then he couldn't have eaten the meal before he died. Case closed, Your Honor. Drop the mic. Okay? All right. So Peter was told, kill, eat. Was it literal? Peter didn't understand. He thought it might have been literal at first. He said, Lord, Lord, I've never eaten anything unclean. He's like, no, I'm not it's a parable. It's a vision. It's not literal. Okay? Yeshua tells us that the Creator always spoke to us in parables. And so he did too. Of course, he was the Creator too. Okay. So that being said, let's understand that Lazarus and the beggar named Lazarus and the whole thing with Abraham's bosom and all that stuff, and the rich man, etc., this whole thing is a parable. It's not about what happens when you die. Okay. Okay, the whole thing really is about, you guys don't seem to understand. Even if I sent somebody back from the dead, you wouldn't listen. That's the point. Said you guys are so stubborn and so hard-headed and stiff-necked that even if I were to send somebody back from the dead, you wouldn't hear it. There's a lot of other things going on there too. This has nothing to do with what happens when you die. All right? That's not what it's about. And how can you know that, Rabbi? Okay, because we have a couple of very simple rules of scriptural understanding. Rule number 1, Not in any particular order, but here. Rule number 1 is that, well, actually, we read it today. I'll use the rule number 1 from what we read today in Deuteronomy. I'll switch it around. Rule number 1 is you need how many witnesses to establish something? 2 or 3. How many places does this parable appear? Okay, that's a problem. If we're going to establish a Torah point about it, it's not a problem if it's just a parable. But if it's going to create halacha, if it's going to teach us something, that there would have to be a second witness to it. Okay, rule number 2. If I've got 99 things that say A and one that says B, the problem is not A. So we don't use B to create a policy, a doctrinal position, etc. Now, that's not to say that B is a problem. It means our understanding of B is the problem. Okay? So if I know from everywhere else that this doesn't match the scriptural understanding in all the other places about what happens when you die, then this is either an insert by the Catholic Church, because it really helps their, post-death scariness or whatever, or it's a parable that's making some other point and it's not literal. But it can't undermine what everything else says. Okay? Very important. Like the guy on the cross. Now in Luke, how many places are the guys on the cross mentioned? No, twice. But in the other place, are they doing anything more than mocking? No, they're just mocking. All right? All right, but that was the question you were going to ask? Preemptive strike. Okay. All right, so only Luke has him saying the things that we're so famously familiar with. And so that is something that A, doesn't pass the 2 witnesses rule, and B, it doesn't actually match up with anything else in Scripture, this idea that you can sort of make this deathbed confession and somehow that makes it so you're in. Because that undermines the whole idea of walking it out, having to endure till the end. No, it says, do whatever you want. He admitted that he deserved to be on there, so he clearly did whatever he wanted. Never repent. By the way, is there any repentance in anything he said? Nope, he just said, I belong up here. I know a lot of people that do wrong things, they're proud of it, that have no problems admitting, yep, I'm a monster, I'm evil, I'm bad, whatever, no problem. No repentance, no remorse. He simply acknowledged, I belong up here, he doesn't. Even the demons know the Torah is correct. It says they know the word better than you do. That doesn't make them any less demons. So just because he figured out that Yeshua didn't belong on there, so now he gets eternal life? I don't think so. Okay? So let's understand from this question that we should not be building theological positions, doctrinal positions, halachic, our walk positions on things that A, have only one witness. That doesn't mean it's wrong and has no use. It may be that we don't understand what to do with it. Put it up on the shelf. Okay? All the things I teach you, where do? We go to 75 different places. That's how you get 50 parts in something. Because everywhere it says the same thing. Gives it a lot of strength. Also recognize that your book, this beautiful thing called the Scriptures, or whatever version you have, but just the Bible, okay? It's not perfect. I saw 3 King James only people faint. Okay. I literally chased 3 of them out of our congregation by going through the proof that their book wasn't perfect. They got so mad, got up and left. Well, Scripture is the inerrant word of, and all this stuff. Well, yeah, I'm sure it was in its original form. I have no doubt. In its original form, it was perfect. Problem was, he gave it to people. And they needed to, filter it through languages so that we could try to understand it, which means that we have all kinds of interpretations. How many of you use the NIV? Nobody. How many of you purposefully never use the NIV? Well, why? Because it's got errors in it and all kinds of mess. Is the NIV the only one with that problem? No, they all do. The truth's in there. You just got to dig it out a little bit. It's been manhandled. It's been handled by man. It's been manhandled. So let's think about this. This stuff was not originally in a book. What was it in? Scrolls. Not a problem probably to get a scroll somewhere and tamper with it a little bit. But if you're going to then tamper with every reference in all the scrolls, a lot more effort. You understand what I'm saying? That's why if you find Moses says it, 2 or 3 prophets say it, Messiah says it in 1 or 2 of the Gospels, Paul, James, John, Peter, whatever, they say it, you know what? It's probably true. You understand? Because inserting something or messing with multiple scrolls and multiple writings, it wasn't that easy to do. People didn't have access to the whole thing. Didn't become the whole thing till, Constantine had them put it together. We got the canon that we have. People had a piece here and a piece there. Big deal. Right? But we have to deal with those realities. So you got to remember, first that we ask our question, okay, now we also go through the context part. Who's talking? Who's the audience? And then the million-dollar question, what is the issue? Why is it even being discussed? Was somebody asking about what happens when you die? No. There was other things happening here. And so we have this whole thing going on. And the bottom line is this, verse 31, but he said to him, if they do not hear Moses and the prophets, neither would they be persuaded, even if one should rise from the dead. That's speaking about Yeshua. They wouldn't even believe that. Okay, that was the point of the parable. So it's a parable. It's not talking about what happens when you die. I know it's been used that way by all the Christian churches for forever, but it has nothing to do with that. Okay, so bear in mind, so in this one is really good to scare you. The other one that's really good is the thief on the cross, because that makes you think that deathbed confessions work. And by the way, those used to be fairly expensive. No, really, the church charged you for that. You had to pay to have someone come and do a deathbed confession. I'm not making this stuff up. We'll look it up. Made the church a lot of money. A lot of money. So kind of convenient to have that little tweaked little piece there in Luke. It doesn't make any sense either. If you understand anything from Scripture, you know that what he says doesn't make any sense. He says to the thief, today I say to you, you'll be with me in paradise. Or I say to you, today you'll be with me in paradise. Well, Yeshua didn't go anywhere for 3 days. So the thief got to go first? Well, then some people will say, well, because there's no punctuation, if you put a comma over here, then it makes it say, like, today I'm telling you that someday you'll be with me in paradise. It's now we're bending and twisting and spinning and playing games, all right? And that, I'm not a big fan of that, okay? So I decided to just say, that goes up here on the shelf. I don't know why that's in there, and I don't even know if it belongs in there. Because part of the manhandling is some adding and taking away. The Jewish community, with its hands on the Masoretic text, have done whatever it could to hide Messiah. There are quotes in the New Testament that you go back to the Old and they're not there. You know why? Because it's in the Septuagint, it's not in the Masoretic text. Because the person quoting it in the New Testament is going out of the Septuagint, not out of the Masoretic. But you would have thought, well, the Masoretic one was the one that's got higher authority. Well, maybe not. But when I started looking for the quotes that I'm reading in the Brit, and I go to the Masoretic text, it doesn't say that. There's a place where it says, in the body of the scroll. And the same place in the Masoretic says, my ears you have opened. Who stole the body? Okay, so you have two groups of people with agendas. The Old Testament was messed with to some degree by the Masoretes, because they did not want anybody thinking about heading into Christianity. And the New was messed around with by the early church fathers who hated the Jews. That's where the phrase Judaizing came from, our good church fathers. Okay? Most of which, if you study them, were fairly good pagans. I mean, they were some sickos in there, I'm telling you right now. You sicko. Okay. All right? I mean, you read some of the stuff about these guys, And by the way, our early church fathers, you would think they all were friends and they got along. Oh no, the stuff they wrote about each other, oh, they all thought the other ones were psycho crazies that should be killed. You start reading about Marcion and Origen and all those guys, they didn't like each other at all. Okay? And so, but they had influence on that. Okay? I've got a book called The Gospel that Marcion put together, the canon. One of the first canons, Marcion put it together. You know what's in there? Part of one gospel and a few of Paul's letters, and that's it. No Old Testament whatsoever. He hated the Jewish people. Problem was, they needed the Tanakh because it's the only way to make a case for Yeshua. So he was really kind of checkmated. He couldn't get it done. But you have to understand, that's where these people are coming from. Right? There was an incredible rift between the Jewish believing body and the Gentile believing body who came in and became grafted in. Horrible battle between them. And it was equal animosity in both directions, by the way. Okay? It's just there was a whole lot more of one than the other, so they tended to win. A lot more Gentiles than there were Jews. Okay. So, go ahead. That was a long-winded answer.
Okay.
And by the way, so there you go, Norma. That was mostly part 4, okay? It really was. Okay, see, now she wants part 5 and 6. Go ahead.
All
I
right.
can't win.
3 questions here related to baptism and mikvah. I'll read you each 3. So,
okay.
Rabbi, I found about a year ago, at which time I studied the history of the Christian church and decided to leave. I'm not baptized yet. Is there a certain way for me to observe Passover and the holy days? And another one says, I was baptized in Christian church. Do I need to be baptized again, observing the Torah? And the third one, we're considered non-covenant until we do a mikvah. It's a question.
Okay, 3 good questions. So the first one, I just want to make sure I understood, was like, do they need to be mikvah to go to do Passover?
Is there a certain way for me to observe Passover and the holy days? I'm not baptized yet.
Okay, so for someone who's not baptized yet. Okay. All right. So we don't have in the scriptures, in the Tanakh part anyway, where the Torah is given, any instruction that says that you need to have mikvah for anything to do with holy days. All right? It's just not there. But you have to understand is that it is a symbolic act of declaration and of washing clean, and and we see it used in the New Testament as part of a covenantal ritual. People that are, it's really, let me make this simpler because it also answers question number 2. What mikvah is all about is status change, okay? It's a part of declaring a change of status, okay? When John was doing it, it was for forgiveness of sin. It was a repentance thing. I'm in sin, I'm going in the water, I come out clean. You see this out throughout the Tanakh because they didn't, Christians want to believe that you only get baptized once. Well, they went in the water for almost everything you can think of in the Old Testament. I mean, any time that you almost ran into any kind of problem, you had to go. But remember, they didn't have showers and baths and other things they have to do. And so to become clean, you would have to go through this ritual. From the status of being declared ritually unclean, because you did something or came into contact with something that would make you unclean, really in the context of being able to go to the temple. Okay? So that kind of an unclean type of status situation. You get it so far? So, John was using it for status change when he was baptizing them out in the wilderness. From sinner to being forgiven. And so when we talk about doing the feasts, there's really not a status change thing that you need in terms of having to be mikvahed before you can keep the feasts. Okay, then there's a circumcision requirement for Passover, no requirement for any other feast as far as being able to attend it, all right? And by the way, we don't have anybody checking, but that's on you. Nobody wants the job. Okay. I've asked around. Anybody? No, never mind. Okay? And that rule has never changed. Don't say we're in the New Testament. No, you need to be circumcised. Only excuse is if you can't. If you have a health condition where it would be unsafe for you to do it. And we have some people like that because they're on blood thinners and other medications and they just wouldn't be good for them to go do it, okay? But, that's still a requirement. Now, so the second question had to do with mikvah for, right, they got it done in Christianity, they need to do it again. Okay, so that's why I was talking about status. All right, so you still might want to change the fact that your status has changed. I was Christian, and now I'm Torah observant. Well, it's a change of status. People did it often also. I'm single, I'm getting married. I'm going to get a mikvah before I get married. I'm changing my status. If you get divorced or you become a widow or widower, you might get mikvah as a change of status. Well, after you grieve and everything else, but when you're ready to move into your new status. All right? You come into ministry, guess what? You get mikvah. That's why, when people ask about baptism, the first question I ask them is, why did Yeshua get baptized? Anybody want to answer that? Oh, see, you guys all heard me answer this before. What do Christians say? I don't know, as an example for us. John's baptism was for forgiveness of sin. Did Yeshua sin? No. But what did what did Yeshua tell John when John said no? Because John said, no, I'm not doing it. Not like that, but He said, I'm not even worthy to, loosen your sandals, and you want me to put you in order? He says, no. And Yeshua said, John, we got to do this because it fulfills righteousness. There's a righteousness issue. And you know what John did after that? He didn't say another word. He just did it. Okay? Because there's a Torah issue. You start your ministry at age 30, and you start by going in the water. Moses did it to Aaron and his sons. Okay? It's presided over by an anointed appointed. So Moses did it for Aaron and his sons, and then after that, the Kohanim did it for everybody else. Okay? And John would have been of the Kohanim. So that's why he went to John. Not just because they were cousins, but because he probably was the legitimate high priest. So change of status. So some of you may want to go in the water, I don't know, almost maybe even once a year as you're first learning all this stuff, because you keep having more stuff you're letting go, and you still want to kind of come out with a new fresh start. So no problem going in more than once. Some of you after you went in this week said, but I'd rather do it when it's warmer. Well, come to our picnic and mikveh in the summer. The water's plenty warm. The air's really warm. Okay? It's like 90 every time we do it. And so, no problems there. So hopefully, now the third one had to do with...
Are we considered not covenant until we mikvah?
Yeah, the answer would be no. It's not part of actually covenanting officially. We've used it as a way to declare your covenant, okay? There's no scripture saying that that's exactly how it's done. I came into ministry, like whatever it was, over 20 years ago, and so when I realized at some point people were going to want to be baptized or immersed, I looked around and nobody seemed to know what you needed to do for that, okay? And so I first researched and realized that we don't dunk people. John did not get in the water with all those people in the Jordan and freeze. The Jordan can be really cold. All right? He didn't turn into a prune all day dunking people. The matbil, okay, he's known as Yochanan HaMatbil. Matbil is the immerser. That was a title for the person that oversaw or presided over the person going in the water, who was there to acknowledge you did it correctly. You went completely under. But you went and did it yourself. So he was the overseer of the ceremony, so to speak. All right? In Israel, they have lots of mikvahs that they dug up. And basically, it's like a staircase going in and another one coming out, and there's a little platform. The platform is for the matbil, who would watch you go in, make sure you did everything right, and come back out. And that was a life or death job, because if you didn't do it right, you went to the temple and you weren't clean, you could get killed. So it was a serious deal. Okay? All right? Okay, so you don't need to do it for covenant. We do use our 8 declarations as part of our declaration of covenant. Okay? And then we do the mikvah. So when I prayed about how should we do it today, that's what I was given. Is it right or wrong? I have no idea. A lot of people find it very valuable, very meaningful, very powerful. So we've been doing that for most of 20 years. Mostly it was 7 declarations, now it's 8. We added 1. Okay?
All right, in continuation of that, we have a couple of questions about, all right, so how do we do this if we have no one around us to do a mikvah? And someone came up, can parents baptize their children who wish to be baptized?
Okay, two good questions. Can you get my water bottle on my desk? It's the shaker bottle with the blue top. Thank you. All right. Okay, let's deal with the second one first. I don't remember the first question, but the second one is as far as the children. All right? 1 second. Smooth. It's alkaline water. Okay, no. I think that the mikvah is a big deal. Now, the way we do it, you know, we have people make these 8 declarations. If you're new on online and you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's on our website, I think, on the Sukkot page. Actually, I think we took that stuff down. We had to try to get it back up. But you can ask for them. We can get them to you. It's 8 declarations. And the declarations are covenantal statements. They're very powerful. I've never had anybody not want to do them. Okay, nobody's ever had an issue on the 8 that we have there. But I generally speaking, don't put anybody in the water till they're at least 20. 20 being the age of majority in the book of Numbers. That's when they started counting the men for war. They were 20 and above. Okay, so I do not immerse children. All right? I mean, somebody might make a case and an argument because I don't think that they're ready to make that kind of commitment. Actually, a lot of them aren't ready till 30 or 40. But at 20, if they're not ready and they do it anyway, it's on them. If they're 15 and they do it and they're not ready, I feel like it's on me for letting them. Okay? And I always go through the process at the beginning of making sure you do understand, you read the declarations, you know what you're doing. And if you say yes, then it's on you. Because people will say, how could you let so-and-so baptize, blah, blah, don't you know this? I said, listen, it's on them. I'm just doing the officiating. It is not my job to screen the baptizees, whatever you say. Those who are going to get wet. Okay, it's not my job to screen them. It's my job to preside over it and make sure they understand what they're doing. All right? And so that's all I do. And that's why I tell people, you know, and I should remind people that before we ever get started, please, because a lot of people will show up here, and it happened this year, it happens every year, because I forget sometimes, and their kids are wanting to go in, and I'm like, I'm sorry. I would rather that not be the case, because this isn't something that you just go and do, and it's fun and this and that. It's a serious commitment type of thing. At least the way I do it with the declarations, okay? And so, no. Now, if you've made the declarations with us and you want to go in again the next time, you just don't have to do the declarations again. Just go in for your own reasons. I'm a year older, I learned some stuff, or some things have changed in my life that are really profound, and I just feel like I want to go leave some stuff in the water. Okay? Some of you think, I'd like to do that every week. All right? And so, no problem at all. Just let me know at the next time that you're here and that this is going on and you want to participate. We'll have you stand off to the side so that you're next to the group that's going to make the declarations, but you're still there to go in the water, and we'll still watch over you to make sure you do it all the way, etc. But you're going in for your own reasons. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, okay? And we usually do have a few that do that as well. So hopefully that makes some sense. What was the first part of that question?
I've looked at 40 others since then.
Because the second part had to do with children. I don't remember what the first part was.
So basically, if they don't have they're in a remote area and don't have anyone to do it for them, how do they get it done?
Okay, how do they get it done? You can use our declarations if you want. It doesn't require somebody like me to preside over. You just need somebody to witness you. Because you're making these declarations in a public setting, but it's really a private thing between you and your Creator. Okay? So if you have some people that you can have, witness that, and don't just have somebody in the world do it, because they're not going to be there to accountability partner you at all, because they don't care about what you're doing anyway. That's possible. Now, if you're in another country, in another part of the world, I have done this over a video chat. Okay? Okay, I've done that with people in Africa. I've done it with I had one guy and his wife in Africa. We did it one time where we did the declarations, then they went down to the water and went in the water, then they came back afterwards, and then I said a blessing over them when they came back. Okay, we had scheduled it. Hey, I'll get back to you in about 2 hours. By the time we go to the water, go in, we'll take care of that part, then we'll come back. And so we just did it over video. And so that's possible. Of course, you could always invite me to wherever you are, and if we have enough people and stuff, it could be worth the trip. We could do something like that. All right?
All right, so part of that, does it need to be in living water or flowing water?
I know there's opportunities where there's places where there is no living water. So what do you do in those cases? Well, you do what you can do. What the Jewish community does is they actually have a place. By the way, the word mikvah is the place that you do it. But because it's been used so much as including what you do at that place, it's kind of become a universal term for both the tevilah, which is the baptism, and the immersion, and the mikvah is the place that you do it. So the Jews, when they build mikvahs in cities and places like that, they design them to collect rainwater, and they have a system that allows the water to flow into the mikvah and flow out of it from the storage tank, so to speak. So it's living waters that came from the rain that then get stored to be used and flow through their system when someone goes in the water, so the waters are moving. Theoretically, I wouldn't have necessarily a problem if you had to, if there's no waters to use, or if you had a pool, put a hose in it and open up the backwash so that it's flowing in and flowing out. Get the waters to be moving. It's living water, moving waters. But really, the better thing to do, if you can, is find waters that are not, going through the city pipes and stuff, but that you have waters like in a pond or a lake or a stream or a river, that kind of thing. Okay? And we've done it in all kinds of things like that. Oh man, we did it in Alberta. It was like 40-something, 50 degrees outside, raining, and the water was probably in the 40s. And and it was a river, like a stream, not so much a big river, but it was a stream, and it was moving fast. People went in and popped up over there. It's like, somebody keep an eye out. They're coming out over there. There's a young lady that went last, and she was an athlete. She was like an Olympic athlete type of. She dove into it and ended up almost back where she started. It was great. And it was freezing, and it was raining, and the rain was freezing. So you could do it in anywhere. You can work it out. But the preference would be mayim chayim, living waters. Okay? Next question. And I got a whole bunch of people here too, but go ahead and see if we can get another one.
Got a few thousand here too. All right, so.
Well, it's only 9. We got 4 or 5 hours to go.
There's a group of them here on a context of how do you say the name Yahweh? One asking,
Yahweh.
Yeah.
That's how I say it. Was that the question? How do I say it?
How do you get Yahweh from, when there's no W sound in the Hebrew? Is it okay to say Jehovah instead of Yahweh? Is way really the correct meaning on the end, the correct rendering of the tetragram?
Okay, hold on. How do you say Maui? You say Maui? There's no W in Maui. It's Maui, but you say it quickly, sounds like Maui. It's Yahweh. There's no W in Yahweh. The Vav is holding the U. Yahweh. So it sounds like Yahweh. Okay, it's just like, I've been to Maui. It's Maui. You say Maui. I went to Kauai. Guess what? No W in that either. Okay? So let's be careful with that. See, what we have a problem with is people don't understand Hebrew. Okay? So the Yehovah, you know what the problem is with Yehovah? You want the Vav to do 2 things at the same time, and I don't see that anywhere. You want it to be the O sound and the V sound at the same time. Because Yeho, it needs to hold the Vav holds the O. But then you want Va, so now the Vav holds the Va. That doesn't happen. See, you know Hebrew. That doesn't happen. Okay? So when we do Yahweh, the Vav is holding the U. Okay? The Vav can have a V sound to it, or it can have it's a vowel holder for O and U, like that. Okay? Say Yahweh. All right?
Well, we don't get the vowel points either.
The
vowel mark points, we don't get any of that, so
I
I don't know where to take it.
Well, the Nikudim is something that was added so that we could pronounce things more clearly and understand how they're pronounced, etc. Okay, but I'm just telling you that if you were to use the letters that exist, those letters with or without the vowels, that letter can't do 2 things at the same time. Okay? Because that's what you're asking it to do. Now, let me give you a recommendation. First of all, there's a teaching called, where am I going? No Other Name. Listen to that. and in it we deal with this to some degree. It's not about how we pronounce it. We're all guessing. Okay? Is it Yahweh? Probably not. Is it Jehovah? Probably not. Is it Yahachawashawusha? Probably not. No, that one, definitely not. Okay? Messiah's name is 15 syllables. Yahachawashawusha. That's not his name. Okay? Okay. Now, so let's not get hung up on how to pronounce it. I'm okay if people say Yahuwah. I'm okay if they say Yahweh. I'm okay if they say Jehovah. I'm okay with a lot of... Do the best you can. Okay? We're not sacred namers from the point of view of if you don't say it right, then the magic doesn't happen and you're cursed forever and you're not saved or whatever they say. I mean, it's crazy stuff. All right? Okay. Who's first over here? Okay, you go ahead.
Am I on? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, along that lines, doesn't it say in Revelation that he'll be returning with a name written that nobody knows?
Yes, it does. Well,
There
so
you
much
go.
for that whole deal, isn't it?
Yeah, that just...
And that's in the teaching called... Anybody know what teaching I mentioned that in?
Part 4.
Of what? No, that's Millennium Kingdom Part 4? No. No, there's a real teaching that has that in it. To he who overcomes.
Right.
Because it talks about the different assemblies, and in there it talks about receiving a name that nobody knows. Okay? And you get... And also there's another place in Revelation where it's written on his thigh, a name that nobody knows. So you got 2 places. Okay? It actually talks about a new name that you'll be giving. But see, that's... If I can think about, if I can get to the right chapter on that. What did you say? No, I'm not finding it right away. Okay, it doesn't matter. What's your next question?
Okay.
Wait,
well-
no, I got it. It is 19. 1912 is the right column in the middle of the column. Okay. And his eyes were as flames of fire, and his head was many crowns, having a name that had been written, which no one had perceived except himself. All right, everybody loses. 1913. Okay? I mean, 1912. 1912. All right? I just remember things photographically, which is why I used the old version of the scriptures, because I knew it was going to be on the right-hand column in the middle of the page, on the right side of the right page, etc. So that made it easier for me to just look at that side of the page all the way through. Okay, go.
Okay. Well, you took care of my first question about the thief on the cross, because when I did research on that, it didn't make any sense, and there was only one witness to that. So, second one. I was wondering about when it talks about the fullness of the Gentiles. Is that talking about when everybody is fully scattered? Is it talking about when people become awake? And I was just wondering what your take on it.
It means whatever he thinks it means. We don't know. It's just telling us that he's got a process that he has to complete, and that this is going to be until that is complete, whatever that looks like. Okay? He doesn't tell us that part. By the way, I want to compliment you and Rick on your fashion sense.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Okay. You guys knew that tonight's color was black, and that's good. Okay. All right, wait, Norma needs that mic, because, I made the mistake of getting into Revelation for a second. She's all excited.
We should read Revelation 19:13 together with verse 12.
Well, and he says that having been dressed in a robe dripped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Yahweh. But again, when it talks about he had a name that had been written which no one had perceived except himself, it's not conflicted then in 13. He's also known as the Word. That's like another way of, he's also known as Prince of Peace. He's also known as a lot of things, King of Kings. He's got a lot of things that he's known as. And so this is just telling you that that's another title for him, being known as the Word of Yahweh. Okay? But the name that was written that nobody had perceived except himself is a whole different thing. Right? Names and titles are different. How do I know names and titles are different? What does it say in Matthew that the virgin birth baby was going to be called? Emmanuel. Do you see him called that anywhere in the Brit Hadashah? No. All right. See, so because it's a title, not a name. What does Emmanuel mean? God is with us. Well, is he known as God with us? Yes, he is. He was known as that and referred to as that all the time in the New Testament. But it wasn't his name. Okay? Because after all, the prophecy said that, and Isaiah said that he would be called Emmanuel. But just like we're calling someone the Word of Yah. It's a title. It's an honorific. It's a way of referring to him, but it's not his actual name. Okay? Okay. So that's kind of a good sort of place to run to with that. Give me 1 second. I was looking to see in Revelation, because after all, got Norma all excited here, so we continue in Revelation for a second. Okay. So in Revelation, the linkage I wanted to get to was in chapter 2, which says, he who has an ear, let him hear, verse 17, what the Spirit says to the assemblies. To him who overcomes, I shall give some of the hidden manna to eat, and I shall give him a white stone, and on the stone a renewed name written, which no one knows except him who receives it. So that's what I was thinking of, and actually the better verse was the one in chapter 19, and I just had to connect up which one was which in my head quickly. So just to give you that other verse in Revelation that talks about receiving a name that nobody had known, okay? But better the one in 19. Okay, what next do we have? Okay, Sarah Beth.
Yes, I am asking this for someone who couldn't ask it for themselves. Staying in Revelation. This is referencing the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I've heard a teacher speculate that the reason it's not found in Revelation 22 is that it's not is that it was planted by the adversary. Could this be possible? Or in Revelation 22, the Father returns. So could it instead be that it's not there because death and evil have been cast out, so there would be no tree of knowledge, relationship with evil?
I'm not pondering the answer. I'm pondering how I want to answer, just in case you're wondering what I'm thinking here. Look, time for the first smackdown, okay? Let's not worry about things that are not relevant. They're curious. And really, it's not a smackdown. It's something I want to just make sure that we are encouraged with. Okay, so you have noticed that there's that tree's missing. Well, good. So what? It's just something that makes us wonder why. Why do we want to speculate about things that we have no choice but to speculate about? Especially when it's not, if I tell you the definite real reason it's there, which I don't really know, but let's say I knew it, what does that help in any way except to feed your curiosity? Okay? And so I just want to make sure, and I appreciate actually the person who asked that question because it gave me that opportunity. So please, whoever asked the question, don't be offended. I appreciate that you asked it because somebody eventually was going to ask a question that gave me the opportunity to say, let's not be all that concerned with those things that only can be answered by an educated guess. Can we all agree that he doesn't tell us why the tree's not there? All right, if he didn't want to tell us, I'm okay not knowing. Ooh, there's a concept. If he never thought to tell you, it's okay if you don't know. Apparently, you don't need to know. All right? I would assume that it has to do with, at that point, nobody needs to have a relationship with evil. They're already going to have a relationship with good, and so the tree is missing. This is after all sin and death and everything's been thrown in the lake of fire in chapter 20. So? But I mean, you're forcing us to guess. But let's be careful that we don't get wrapped up on those things that are the curiosities that stir us up. Because I get that in the ladies' halakha group too sometimes. You know, Rabbi, this verse, it's always bothered me. Well, stop letting it bother you. Because it's almost always a verse that has nothing to do with our walk. Okay? And so why let those things bother you? There's almost an infinite number of things in your Bible that you will not understand at this time. Should you let them all bother you? He tells you what you need to know. He reveals what you need to know. And what he reveals to you, that's yours. The hidden things, guess what? They belong to him. That's what it says. So, focus on the things he gave you. I don't mean you like in some profound prophetic knowledge. I mean, you got all these people out there thinking, oh, he gave me something. I mean, the stuff he gave everybody, not just you personally. The stuff he gave people. He came straight out and said, keep the Sabbath, don't eat pork, don't murder, don't steal, right? Keep the holy days, tithe, love your neighbor as yourself, don't commit adultery. I mean, the things he tells you to do straight out. Don't judge, right? All these things. I think we'll work with those things. Don't do as they do to worship me, as they do to their gods, right? Next question. Rick.
Test? Okay.
Rick's trying to really, kiss up to the teacher. He's got a red lanyard and a black shirt.
Uh-oh. I had an observation regarding Lazarus again, but regarding the questions that aren't answered clearly in Scripture, I would imagine during the 1,000 years Yeshua will be answering those questions for us personally.
I'm sure you'll eventually know. Or he may take great delight in looking at your frustrated face saying, you don't need to know. And I'll sit back going, yes.
That's hilarious. Great.
Actually, I picture him saying that's in Millennium Kingdom, Part 4.
Which he will teach, huh?
Funny. Okay.
The whole Lazarus thing again, you mentioned Moses and the prophets. If they didn't believe them, they're not going to believe somebody we send them anyway. But looking even before that, it's the whole parable is kind of sandwiched between that at the end and in the beginning where the Pharisees were sneering at him. He's castigating them for that and talking about righteousness, and there he's saying the Torah and the prophets are until Yohanan. Since then, the reign of Elohim is being announced, and everyone is doing violence upon it, which you've taught us before. They're just, so that's probably, I don't know, am I correct in assuming?
I didn't have time to go back and get the full context. I'm just telling you that if you go back and get the context, which you're probably hitting on a good amount of it, that you'll understand why he gave the parable.
Yes.
That the issue was not, we're all wondering what happens when you die. Okay? He was addressing something that was going on. Like he did with the parable of the sower of the seed, or the parable of the Good Samaritan, or the parable of the prodigal son, or the parable of the fig tree, or the parable of the mustard seed, or the parable. You understand, none of these things are literal. But they had to do with a lesson he was trying to share with them, and he used what was available or how things that they would think about or understand to try to make a graphic and clear point, which failed miserably 2,000 years later. They understood it. We're trying to figure out what he was talking about now, so disconnected from the moment. Okay? Okay, who's next? Yes. Okay, the children are here to be picked up. They came down from the gym. They're out in the lobby. Parents, your children are out in the lobby. Okay, Jim?
Hello, Rabbi. My wife and I had a question about the resurrections. If you can explain the difference between the two of them, who's going to be in each one?
Okay, wait, I have a list of them here.
Okay. Well, you know what I mean, the people-wise.
It's a little big in my contact list, but,
Okay.
Imagine there are actually about 144,000 of them when I count them the other day. No kidding. All right. Look, all I can give you is this, all right? First and foremost, we need to, I'm not saying you are doing this, we need to stop trying to figure out who's where, okay? This is a rampant problem in the body. It's always been a problem. They want to know who gets in, who doesn't get in, how do we know if I get in, and all this other stuff. You know what? Yahweh told me to tell you. There's a scary sentence. I love when people come to me, Father told me to tell you. What I feel like he's really kind of put on me to share with you is, and I've said this for almost 20 years, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you'll be where you're supposed to be. Okay? So go about doing what you're supposed to be doing. But I'm gonna change that for the first time probably in 20 years. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing the way you're supposed to be doing it, with the right attitude, with the right heart, you'll be where you're supposed to be. Robin's been to all of my feasts. Isn't that something I've been saying for 20 years? Okay? You can clap for her being at every feast. All right? And so I've been saying that for the whole time. I really believe that if you can focus on doing what you're supposed to be doing, you'll be just fine. Now, that being said, we know that there's more than one resurrection. How many? I don't know. We don't know. We know that there's more than one. How do we know? Because he calls one the first. Why would you call something the first unless there's a second? You just call it the resurrection. If there's only one, you just call it the resurrection. So there's more than one. And so we know who's in the first. We don't know how the rest of it plays out. The first resurrection is those that are at that time have passed, because we're talking about a resurrection here, have died in Messiah. Now, by the way, died in Messiah doesn't mean they were only the ones that were born after 2,000 years ago. They're dying in Messiah. All those that were, remember in John 1, he says he came to his own, and his own didn't receive him, but some did. But mostly they didn't. But that's not after he came in the flesh. That doesn't come to 2 verses later, or 3 verses later in John 1, where he comes in the flesh. When he comes to his own, it means the ones, he created all man, all people. And so all of the people that have come to him and are in Messiah, they will be resurrected in the first resurrection. If you're still alive, you don't get to be in the first resurrection. You get changed at the time of the first resurrection. You can't be resurrected if you're not dead. Okay? So you have a hope. Some people say, I hope to be in the first resurrection. I hope to not be in the first resurrection. I hope to be changed during the first resurrection. I could avoid that death thing if it's okay with anybody. I'd be okay with that. All right? So if you're alive, you get changed. If you're dead, you get resurrected. These are those that have, I don't know what the word is, they've graduated, they've completed the journey, they've passed the Deuteronomy 8:2 test, okay? They've endured to the end, all that kind of good stuff. How did the rest of it work out? I have no idea. I speculate in the Millennium and Kingdom teachings, the ones that I did, the ones that actually you can listen to, that all the rest of the people that ever lived that had not had their opportunity to show whether to pass the Deuteronomy 8:2 test, that they get resurrected at some point during the millennium. I don't know if it's in waves or in tiers, so it's not like billions of people all showing up at once. I have no idea. It doesn't say anywhere in Scripture. All right? I mean, there's a reason why it's 1,000 years, not 10 years or 100 years. I mean, how long should it take for Messiah to establish what he needs to establish? Well, it's 1,000 for some reason. And it's not even quite 1,000, because just towards the end of it, or just after, well, I guess it's just after the 1,000 that Satan gets released. Okay, so I guess it's a full 1,000. Again, I don't read Revelation that much. Okay? So he gets released at the end. And then, of course, everybody that's living in that thing called the millennium, he's released at the end for, okay, did you ever wonder, why would he release him? It doesn't say he escaped, by the way. If he escaped, you could almost understand, okay, well, then there's a problem. He escaped. He doesn't escape. He's released. Why? It seems insane. Why would you do that? Because Hasatan has a role in all this. It's not like he consciously understands that he's working for the Father's purposes, but he does. We think this is a battle. You know, Christianity wants to make it sound like it's a battle between Satan and God's losing. Really? We need to go out there and save more souls. We're losing. Are you kidding me? The God I believe in isn't losing. He's in full control at all times. Absolutely. All right? He is in complete control. He only allows or causes. Nothing happens that he doesn't allow or cause. Satan can only do, remember what happened even with Job. He said, well, you can take away all the stuff, but only his stuff. You can't take his life. He was only allowed to do what he was allowed to do. He couldn't do any more. And so he's released at the end of the 1,000 years because all those people during that 1,000 years have not been tested. And you see, even after living all that time with Yeshua himself, many fail the test. It's incredible, but it's true. But then again, it's incredible when you see that people walked with him, literally walked with him, and stopped walking with him at some point. It's incredible that people literally were there when Egypt was destroyed, and yet they decided to go in a different direction. So I guess we shouldn't be that shocked. Okay? So does that answer your question? Okay, good. All right, so live stream.
Okay, from, I'm not sure how to say the name, Simoz, says, Shabbat Shalom, is the resurrection of those who rose with Yeshua and went about the towns, etc., to be considered the first resurrection of the dead?
No.
Matthew 27.
Okay. I don't remember off the top of my head. Does that appear anywhere else? I don't think it does, right? One gospel? Okay, so we're not going to worry about what happens in one place without witnesses. All right? It's a very strange thing we read. Makes no sense on almost every possible level. Okay? Not to mention the fact that no historian records that incredible event. I mean, that would have made a lot of news, you would think. Dead people are coming out of the graves, you know. And so I don't know what to do with that, all right? But it is not the first resurrection. The first resurrection is connected to his return, okay? And not because I speculate. I mean, that's actually what it says. I mean, it's connected to his return, okay? Go ahead.
From April Hokut, so Daniel 6, verse 10.
You guys that wanted to keep in that eschatology. You love that eschatology. Nobody wants to notice this. Nobody wants that. We got the first bunch of Torah questions. Now we want to go into eschatology. All right, Daniel what?
6, verse 10. Are we to pray 3 times a day toward Jerusalem?
Oh, that's actually a halakha question. Good. I like that. And Daniel, I don't have to turn there. I know what you're asking. Okay. So in Daniel, you got to understand, they just came out of Israel. The temple was destroyed. They're now in captivity in Babylon. So he's imitating the rituals of the temple. So he's having his moments, and he faces towards the temple so that he can be able to, as Solomon had put it before, when they first, he got inaugurated as a king. And he said, and if your people who you scatter and take away from here, whatever happens to them, will face this place and pray. Of course, at that point, Daniel was more, lamenting its destruction and desiring to be in that place. But this was him forming a traditional expression in the only ways he could in remembering the temple. So are we to pray that 3 times a day? No, there's no instruction. We have to pray 3 times a day. Okay? Can you benefit from that? I know a lot of people find it very powerful to have that time scheduled in your life on a regular way. The Jewish community does these things. As a matter of fact, if you're in New York or any place where you have a lot of Jewish stores, a lot of them will just shut down and close for the afternoon prayers. And people that know that that's a place of gathering for that will just walk in, they'll do their thing, takes 10 minutes or whatever, and then they open the store and everybody's gone. I've been in those stores when that's happened. People walk in, they all have their little pocket prayer books, the little sidurs, and they sit in there, they do their little quick davening, they say their prayers, and then they leave. But that's part of their ritual. My wife worked for a dentist that was Orthodox, and he would close and go into his office at those times, and nobody would bother him until he came out, and they would come out. And so, but there's no instruction that says you have to do that, okay? Next question.
From Tali, says, Rabbi, I listened to Do You Know the Father and the Son? And I was wondering, since Yeshua is Elohim, since Yeshua is Elohim the Son, are we worshiping 2 gods?
I want to think about the best way to answer this. No, you're not worshiping 2 gods. You're trying to understand I know how I can answer this. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, this is from the Millennium and Kingdom part, I don't remember, 2 maybe? Okay. We're going to go to Micah. All right. Get you guys over to Micah 4. Okay. This has to do with vertical alignment. Okay, Yeshua is the one, for all intents and purposes, that has been the, quote unquote, the God of this world. I mean, he's the creator of this world. He's showing us that there's a higher being than him. Okay? But he has been, and there is none else. I want us to notice something very interesting. So, in Micah 4, this is all kind of dealing with that whole millennial thing and understanding what we will be doing in the millennium. And I'm very excited to tell you, for all you ADD people, you won't be strumming a harp and staring into the face of Messiah. Because that sounds like the 7th or 8th or 9th level of hell right there. Not because you wouldn't want to look at Messiah, but just sitting forever. Okay? This is what I'm looking forward to? Ay. All right. So, this is a good way to answer the question. So, in the latter days, verse 1, it shall be that the mountain of the house of Yahweh is established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and the people shall flow to it. And many nations shall come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh. Okay, that was totally off key. To the house of the Elohim of Yaakov, and let him teach us his ways, and let us walk in his paths. For out of Zion comes forth Torah, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among many peoples, reprove strong nations afar off. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither teach battle anymore. So here you have in the first 3 verses what hopefully is clearly talking about the millennium. Can we all agree? Okay? This has not happened yet. This is not happening now. This is where the house is established of Yahweh. This is Yeshua's ruling and reigning from Jerusalem. Now, that being said, we get to verse 4. He said, nation, at the end of verse 3, nation's not going to do battle anymore. They're not going to teach battle anymore. But each one is going to sit under his vine and under his fig tree, and no one to make them afraid, for the mouth of Yahweh of hosts has spoken. Now, the fig tree, which is basically one of the 7 species, the figs, and we have that teaching going on with the children right now. So the fig tree is also understood from those in the Jewish community that have studied this out. We see the symbolism to meaning a place of studying of Torah. You know, when Nathanael was seen, Yeshua said, I saw you sitting under the fig tree. In other words, I saw you studying Torah. When he selected Nathanael to be one of the disciples, okay? So he says, but each one is going to be unmolested. They're going to be unharmed. They're not going to be afraid while they're studying the Torah, which is a big deal considering how often that's been a problem in history. And now he explains in verse 5, for. When he says for, that's saying because. This is the reason why they're going to be okay and unmolested and safe while they're studying the Torah. Because all the peoples walk, each one in the name of his mighty one, but we walk in the name of Yahweh our Elohim forever and ever. Now, if you're reading that through, it doesn't sound like each person walking in the name of their mighty one is a problem. That's the reason for all the good stuff. So how can that be? Walking in the names of mighty ones is usually a problem. He said, but we're going to walk in the name of Yahweh our Elohim forever and ever. Okay, and that day declares Yahweh, I gather the lame, I bring together the outcasts of those who have been afflicted. So there's no negative to that verse 5 to walking in the names of mighty ones. So what's going to happen there? In the millennium, what do you think people will think of those from the first resurrection, those that are alive in the flesh during the millennium? We will be mighty ones. And we will be assigned a bunch of people, cities, whatever that is. The parables hint at these things. That will be our it'll be our responsibility to teach them his ways. And so in the vertical alignment, you will be their Elohim and pointing them up the line to Yeshua and the Father. Do you understand this? Does this make any sense? Okay? So as far as we are concerned in this part of the journey, there is only one. And that's the one that created all this stuff. That doesn't mean the Father wasn't involved. The Father's above all that on the next level. On this level, there is only one. And Yeshua has been that one that we've dealt with all the time. So when you read those verses, there is none else. Well, as far as we're concerned, that's the case. When you're working with those in your cities, they're going to know a little bit more, because when you're dealing with them, yes, they better listen to you, but they will still know that Yeshua is sitting on the throne and that the Father's still up in the heavens. So now there'll be a whole nother layer of understanding going on there. But you will be their mighty one. That means that you will be keeping them safe. They will be protected from harm. They're going to be able to study Torah without being harassed. Hallelujah is right. I didn't see a whole lot of hallelujahs, but some people are saying, okay, let me digest all that. Does this make any sense? I make a much clearer argument and case for this in the Millennium and Kingdom teaching, okay? I don't remember. You've watched it a whole bunch of times. What part did I say that in? You don't remember, okay. All right, but it's in the first 3 parts, okay? But understand, well, there's only 3. There you go. It's in the first 3 parts. Norma thinks I'm going to do 5, 6, and 7 and all of those, so we'll see. All right? So now, hopefully that answered the question that came from the live stream. You know, this is part of what the deal is. There aren't 2 gods the way you would think of it that way. We were working through Yeshua up until the point where he pointed us to the Father. Now he wants us to understand that ultimately all of it gets directed there. When we are walking as mighty ones, we will be redirecting it in the same way. Okay? It will not be about us. And we will say the same things Yeshua said. I only do what my teacher, Yeshua, teaches me, who the Father taught him. Okay? Pure, vertical, straight alignment. Amen? Amen. Okay, more questions. The same topic? Okay, give her the microphone.
Why they turn it off? Okay, I'm still processing. So in this case, the Torah students at this point are going to be appointed to be kind of leaders, like guidance for...
Not the Torah students that are sitting under the fig tree, the ones who are in the resurrection.
Okay, them.
Yeah.
That could be us.
I hope so.
Okay, that's the idea. But I think that who is better qualified are not the body of Judah when they accept the Messiah. I consider that they are better qualified for that.
I'm not the one who's going to decide who does what. The Father's going to decide who does what. Okay? It just seems to be that there's going to be some people known as mighty ones that everybody's walking in the name of. That seems to be a good thing here while we walk in the name of Yahweh. In other words, he's showing a vertical alignment. They walk in your authority, you walk in his authority, and Yeshua walks in the Father's authority. And it's showing a vertical alignment, okay? All right? Okay, Ali?
Just confirmation for something that was covered before on Shabbat, halakha on Shabbat. The question was asked, I think from the live stream, can we eat food prepared by the uncovenanted on Shabbat? You said no because it's...
Well, no, I didn't say you can't eat what's prepared from them. I wouldn't eat what's cooked by them. If they cook it, if they're preparing it that way, and they're getting all involved, if they're just going to make some sandwiches and you want to eat sandwiches with them, go ahead and eat sandwiches with them.
So you wouldn't eat something like, I don't know, scrambled eggs that they make?
Yeah, if they're going to make eggs or they're going to make French toast or some big pancakes or whatever they're going to make, I would not get involved with that.
Okay, then.
If you wouldn't do it, you shouldn't let them do it for you in your house. That's, I mean, you understand the context there?
Okay, so...
But if it's lunchtime and they're making sandwiches for everybody, they can make you a sandwich.
Okay, so what about...
Because you do it yourself. What are they going to provide for us for here? Okay, now, again, I understand what you're asking. Okay, again, we're dealing with a... Okay, let me get back to that. Let me finish your question first.
He was kind of going the same way I was going. I was thinking of a hotel situation where there's a buffet in the morning serving all day or something.
Okay.
And obviously they're cooking on Shabbat.
But let's go back to if you could do it yourself. If you were doing it yourself, you're at home, you could make a sandwich. You're at home, you could pour a bowl of cereal. Hey, but your brother or your sister or your parent or somebody else who's uncovenanted in your house, it would be one of your siblings. Okay, they're making some sandwiches. Hey, they can make you one too. If they wanted to do that. I mean, I don't know if they'd want to do that, but I'm just saying, I mean, it already sounds like they have other challenges just even getting to work, so I'm not so sure that's going to come up. But they may make something like eggs or whatever. I just wouldn't give them an opportunity to point the finger. Now, when you're here, you can't do any of that on property. They have rules that you cannot prepare things that way in your room. Okay, there are things you just cannot do. All right, so we go and eat the meals. Okay, and we're working with the property. There's only so much we can do to get them to not do certain things because they are not our manservant and maidservant. And they're serving another 1,000 other people from other groups that are not us on the weekend. Okay, they've got bigger groups than us here. We're going to be we're the biggest group here right now, so we've basically taken up the whole dining hall. Not going to be the case starting tomorrow. Okay? And so we can't control that. And I can't do it for myself. So that's a whole different sort of situation. Does it make any sense? Okay? But if you're at home, you can make your own sandwich. You can have your own bowl. You can have something you made the day before that you can warm up. You don't need to, participate in that. Okay. I know, look, this is complicated. Why? Because we live in a world that's not his world. So we're stuck with all kinds of problems and issues. Now, one day, if you want to fix the problem, pray that money comes in enough for us to buy the property we want to buy, to build our own feast site, so that we can then have total control over all of that. All right? And that wasn't a solicitation to you guys. I know a lot of you guys already give what you can, but pray that whatever needs to come in order to have us have a property. And I'm not just talking about enough to buy the property, but so that we can actually build what we need to build on it. Because it's going to take a lot. Now, the group is growing a lot, so we shouldn't take that long. I'm hoping, As it is, the property here is trying to book us out through 2025. I'm not kidding. That's the dates they want right now. Because they get booked a lot in advance. This is a huge place. It's used by a lot of ministries, and they get booked up way in advance. They're very excited about us, even though we're small, but we take up a lot of time. So they've got to really block out time for us. And we're not flexible in our dates. They've got groups that can be flexible because they want to run a conference. Well, that big weekend we're booked. Okay, we'll do it the next week. I mean, they're flexible. We're keeping a dated event. We have to have it between these dates. Okay? I'm sorry, I feel like I neglect you guys on this side, but the people with the microphones are over here. I go, oh, you guys are still here. Look, there's more people. Okay. Okay. But it's a really good question, Ollie, and what I hate is that I don't have a great answer. Okay? Because we're in that place where there's really not a great answer. Okay? Okay, Greg.
Okay. Thanks, Rabbi. There's one scripture I can think of.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's 10 o'clock. We're done. Oh, go ahead. I'm teasing you.
For this question is Joel.
Hold on, because you got to put it up here where I can hear you.
Is Joel 2:13.
Okay.
It says, "And tear your heart and not your garments, and turn back to Yahweh your Elohim, for he shows favor and is compassionate, patient, and of great love and commitment, and he shall relent concerning the evil." Is there ever a time that rending or tearing our garments is appropriate in grief or sorrow? And is that done today with...
No, it's not. Well, look, it's not done today. It really probably wasn't done necessarily all that much in the past, although the high priest does it in Yeshua's time, and that's a big no-no. Okay? Because that was something you were not allowed to do if you were a high priest. Okay? So that was a big deal. But no, there's no scriptural thing that says, hey, if this is happening, the right thing to do is rend your garments. So, but it's a reasonable question. Okay. Janet Hoffman for the 15th question. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
Patience.
I love that she thought that was patience. Okay, go ahead. She said, thank you, Rabbi, for your patience. Okay. I'm making progress.
So, Rabbi, being a woman, I always like to look back at Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. And with Sarah, I just see the beautiful example of submission to her husband and faithfulness. And I have a little bit of a harder time seeing the walk with Rivka and Rachel, and especially Leah, I mean, the three of them. And so my question is, can you help me understand what I should get from them? And also with Proverbs 31, is that where I should be kind of getting wisdom in terms of how to be a better wife and a woman in my walk? Thank you.
Okay. At some point when we really do get into the classes about men and women that we just sort of started a little bit earlier today, we might get into that a lot more. The scripture, again, I told you in one of the other places that we were talking, it was not written to the women, it was written to the men. So therefore, it doesn't give you a whole lot of insight as to what the women were doing. Okay? It just doesn't. You see some of Sarah's things because it comes into contact with what Abraham's doing. Okay? Like when, Yahweh shows up with the two other messengers and Abraham asks her to go and hurry up and prepare something for the meal. And you see her going and running to do that. But you don't really see her doing a whole lot more. She laughs when she's told she's going to have a baby, and basically that's it. We don't really hear a whole lot more of what she's doing. Same thing then with Rivka, we hear almost less. Okay, we have a little bit about her doing the things she did in order to qualify to be the one that, the servant went to find a wife for Isaac. So, she does certain things. It's sort of the fleece that gets laid out there. So you see her heart and her serving and those kind of things. But otherwise, you don't really get a whole lot from her either. Okay? And so, and then with Rachel and Leah, you just, again, you see a lot of battling for the attention of their husband. You see a lot of, things going on there. But you don't see a lot of everyday life things and seeing them getting involved in very much. So it's hard to point to specific things where you see submission and other things going on there. Matter of fact, you see a whole lot of lack of that in some of those cases. But you see also that it doesn't go well. So it's kind of a negative example that you can see, where these ladies are taking things onto their own sort of, you know what I'm saying? So they're kind of taking things in their own hands. All right? And so, this is part of the problem, right? Okay? And so, we could talk about that more. Then the other thing that you asked was, okay, Proverbs 31, the Eshet Chayil, the woman of valor. So you can glean a lot of stuff out of that, although you got to remember, it's talking about a woman at that time. Okay, and you're not a woman at that time. So you can maybe glean some concepts and principles, but maybe not so much literal stuff out of that. Okay? Okay. Because it's a timepiece. I mean, it was written about a woman at that time and how that woman would be doing things that maybe not a lot of women do now. Because remember, women were able to do things then in a different way than now because they did things in a community. They were in a tribe. So the women could do a lot more effectively because one or two of them could handle a whole bunch of children while the others are doing other things. They're making the bread, they're maybe doing the processing of the animals to whatever degree, or they're handling crops while the men are out with the flock. Or there's a lot different things that they're doing and responsible for because they're doing it as a team. Okay? Because things are done in a community way. Where you're at home with your kids, if you are at home with your kids, a lot of the women who do that, and they don't have anybody to help them. And so rather than having a community where one or two or three women can be watching 5 or 6 or 8 kids, and the other ones could be doing something, okay, even if it means going out to do, just normal tasks of going out and picking up stuff you need from stores and stuff, whatever it is. I'm not even talking about like getting a job or something. I mean, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to be able to just get out of the house and get something done. But if you had help, that's kind of the benefit of community. And we do that actually in Cleveland. In Tennessee, we do that to a certain degree. We have, a place, our MTY Academy, where a lot of the children now go to school, affords the moms who were homeschooling those children now to be able to do things that they would love to do, even if it is work or if it's whatever it is, they have time to do it while their kids are in school. Because a lot of you are trapped because you won't put your kids in public school, and I don't blame you, okay? All right? You guys are all in trouble, though, because it's after 10, and I'm about to wake up. You laugh, but people who know me, they know that's kind of like, ding, it's 10 o'clock, okay? All right. Maureen.
Thank you.
And I have 8 hours sleep, so I'm ready for my 10 o'clock wake up
we're
here.
in big trouble.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between Abraham's bosom and paradise, or is it the same?
Again, that whole thing with Lazarus and the rich man was a parable, so I don't know what exactly he's trying to talk about there. He's trying to make a point that has nothing to do with the literalness of where they are. Okay?
Somebody online earlier mentioned the dead that were raised at the time. My question, it always bothered me, there's a scripture that says it's appointed unto man once to die and then the judgment. They already died. So,
Which is why I don't know why that verse is there. It's not witnessed by any other gospel, and I don't know what to do with it. Okay?
It just always bugged me.
That bugs me too. That's why it's up on my shelf. Hey, look, I got a whole bunch of verses up on the shelf that I just say, okay, you stay out of my way, don't cause me any problems, and one day maybe Abba will tell me what to do with you.
Thank you.
No problem, by the way, putting some stuff up on the shelf. Feel free to do that. You don't know what to do with it. Stop letting it bother you. Take the irritation out of the way and the distraction out of the way and put it on the shelf. I've put a bunch of things up there that I've taken down as he's shown me some things, and a lot of them have stayed there for a very long time, and new ones get put up all the time. Kathy, go ahead.
Rabbi, this is really off, but I've got you.
Well, it's after 10 o'clock. We can do off.
Okay. I have some sisters in Southern California, and they've been listening to, which I was really excited that there was a Orthodox rabbi who recognizes Yeshua as Mashiach, but he's kind of teaching from that. He's from Toronto, Canada, and Rabbi Yahiel, I don't know, from Melech Yisrael, Kehilot, I don't know.
Santi knows who that is.
Okay. All right. So I have listened a little bit when I was with them visiting, and one of my sisters that I talked to, she and another sister that I don't know, she brought up the point that he had taught that they were thinking about going in that community, which recognizes Yeshua, going to become a ger tzaddik rather than a ger toshav. And I said, well, I don't know. Be careful. I mean, because you've talked about people, you know.
Yeah, you got to be careful with some of the ones coming from the Orthodox background as they come into this. One of the things I also want to say, I don't know if maybe it's just a personal thing for me. Unless you're talking about blood relatives, I don't know that it's the best thing to referring to everybody as brothers and sisters. Because you may be surprised that some of them are not as close to you as you'd like to think they are. And just because they believe in Yeshua and claim to be Torah pursuant doesn't make them automatically your brother or your sister. You know what I'm saying? Just be cautious with that, because and it's very Christianized in terms of what they love to do is talk about, you know, brothers and sisters, that kind of thing. We'd like to think that we actually are brethren, that we're actually family under that same covering. Not always the case, though, even though it may feel that way to some degree. So I'm not saying never use it. I would just be really thinking about who I'm calling that. Are they really my brother or my sister? Okay, and I'm just saying, so I'm not saying you used it inappropriately. I'm just saying I would be, you know, because I know some people just use it kind of for everybody. If they're male, they call them a brother. If they're female, they call them a sister. And, you know, they don't even hardly know them. Okay? So, now as far as this congregation up in Toronto, do you want to say something about it? I thought you might. Just by the look on your face. Okay?
Yeah. Rabbi, you're right. I attend Congregation Melech Israel for 7.5 years. So I learned from this rabbi. for 5 years. We had the former rabbi, Rabbi Jack, and also afterward, then Rabbi Ezekiel. Rabbi Jack taught us mostly from the Bible, but Rabbi Ezekiel, he taught us, especially the last 4 years, he always used Midrash, Talmud, and sages, and this sages said, this sages.
Okay.
Yeah, so I am very familiarized with those sayings. So I also have a question that I have quite a bit of notes that I copy, when he taught, and I wrote down, but what I'm going to do with those notes, so should I throw them away or should I just keep them as reference?
Probably doesn't matter. I mean, whatever you want to do with them is fine.
Okay. He also stressed on when we read the book of Song of Songs and also the book of Revelation, he said those are don't take them as literal, just have to read them as parable or, not really. Though these two books, you cannot read them as literal. Please comment.
Look, okay, coming from the Orthodox side of things, the Kabbalists, okay, because you have the Talmudists, but then you have the Kabbalists.
Yeah.
The Kabbalists think that, and the way they see things is that everything is not written literal. Okay, that doesn't mean that the things didn't literally happen. And again, Yeshua even tells that things are written in parable. So they're always looking for the other message in there than just the literal flood or creation. So they start in Genesis, go all the way through Deuteronomy, looking at things at a totally non-literal, but what is the message, what's trying to be told, what is the deeper or hidden or whatever they see in there. And I'm not saying they're right about any of this stuff. I'm just trying to tell you this is what they're doing, okay? So you understand. So this rabbi who's teaching the group now, he sounds to me like he's coming more from a Talmudic and Kabbalistic point of view, okay? And that's what he's teaching them. And then when he talks about the Ger Tzaddik and the Ger Toshav, this is talking about, and in Exodus chapter 12, when it talks about the Passover and who can keep the Passover, it talks about the Gers. Okay, Ger being those that are strangers. Okay, but we're talking about the idea of a stranger who's really a stranger that's actually a proselyte who's looking to join. Okay, and so they have. Now, actually, in Exodus, it actually calls one the Toshav, one the Ger. They actually use them separately. But he's referring to it as a Ger Toshav. So it's a stranger who's this and a stranger who's Tzaddik, who's righteous. These are arbitrary designations that they've come up with. Look, it's the Orthodox Jews that came up with the idea of becoming a Noahide. Okay? That was done to try to keep all of you that were not born Jewish in a box. So you wouldn't try to come into Judaism, but you'd be happy with just the 6 Noahide laws or however many there are, and that's it. Okay? So that was, as far as I could tell, invented by the Orthodox to kind of let you play with something but not bother them anymore. Here's a little bone, go play with it, and now be happy. Okay? And for a lot of Gentiles, that worked because they didn't want to keep Torah anyway. So let me get a few simple laws and not worry about the rest. Okay? But of course, then you're in a second-class citizen status, and you're not, actually in full citizenship, etc. So I would say I wouldn't be listening to this person. I mean, I don't know why you would want to listen to it. It's really trying to get you into a form of Orthodox, Talmudic, or Kabbalistic Judaism, but he claims he also believes in Yeshua.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, he also... he's very fluent in his Jews, very fluent in Hebrew, and also he stressed also in the book of New Testament. So he explains the New Testament in with reference to so much of Judaism point of view.
And that might not be completely off because Yeshua actually quotes a lot of things that are actually Talmudic and Kabbalistic. He does quote some things that fit into both those areas. What you got to remember is, as you're looking at these people, I have no idea what he's. He might be fine from all I know, because you could use those references. I just don't like that people spend that much time in those references when they should be spending most of their time in here, and maybe using a tiny piece of something else if you feel it helps make a point and more clarity. But the thing that I would be more concerned with is just, well, I shouldn't say, the clarity I would give you is, if you go to a Messianic congregation led by a former Baptist, you may find a lot of Baptist stuff in it. You go to one that's by a former charismatic, you might find a lot of charismatic stuff mixed in it. You know what? If you go to a former Orthodox Jew who's now a Messianic, you're going to find a lot of Orthodox stuff in it. I mean, there's no surprise that you're going to find. That's why it's probably good you're being led by a guy who basically was a secular Jew who didn't ever have any serious anything. As far as I wasn't raised in any, deep and serious Judaism, never was raised in any kind of mainstream Christianity. So does that make me better or right anyway? No, but it's possibly an advantage, okay? Because I can't give you one of those flavors. I never really was raised in any of those things, all right?
Yeah, when I was there, I have the same, the feeling you just mentioned, that because I was a Gentile, so those Gentiles have to work so hard to become part of them, second-class citizen.
Okay, I'm glad that worked out. Did you happen to mention something and she went to the congregation, so.
Yeah.
And I have one other, may I? Yeah. It made me think, well, so what do I have to do to come in like Ruth did? Because I always thought, it had to be my heart's declaration and why I'm here and why I'm in government. Your people are my people, your Elohim, my Elohim. Did she have to, well, she was a woman at that time, so she probably wasn't learning Torah. She just came alongside and was part of the community and was learning Torah from her husband.
Didn't you mikvah?
Yes.
Then you did everything you need to do.
Okay.
You made all those declarations.
I did.
Okay. There's nothing more to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Because in the declarations, you basically say, I'm giving up all of my other stuff, and I'm choosing to completely, it's the same thing Ruth did, essentially. I just used more words. Okay? And my words are more specific to explain what it is you're doing, where Ruth just said, your ways, my ways, your people, your Elohim, my Elohim. So what does she mean by that? Well, my words explain exactly what you mean by it, but it's you're doing essentially the same thing. Okay? Okay.
So now
Santi.
on, when I read Song of Songs and Book of Revelation, it's not only from...
Oh, okay, so you're asking about those two. Well, I mean, those two books, Revelation tells you it's not literal. Okay? It tells you that this is a vision that John is having. All right? And so we're not to take a whole lot of it literal. Is he literally opening up scrolls? Is he literally pouring out vials? Is he literally... You know what I'm saying? It's not clear that these are literal. These are images to give us a metaphor for what's happening. Okay? Pouring out plagues. I mean, is there something called, let me get the plagues vial and just pour the plagues out on everything? It's not so much literal, okay? It's a vision, and he's seeing things that he doesn't understand. Some of the things he sees might match up with modern-day helicopters. Or people say these kind of things. They look at it, and certainly it might. I don't know. But we're forced to guess. Song of Songs is also written as absolutely a poetic and, descriptive, to create an image of something and make a point, but it's not so much literal, okay? So those two books for sure, I think it's reasonable for him to say that. Is there anything literal in them? Probably. I wouldn't say that, it's completely not, but they're for the most part, they're meant to not be taken and focus on the literal parts of it, but understand what the point is. Okay?
Okay. You said this side, they are sleeping. They are not sleeping.
I didn't say they were sleeping. I said I feel like I've ignored them. I didn't say they were sleeping.
No, you don't.
No. They're wide awake. I just felt like I just, haven't looked over there enough. Yeah. Okay. You guys still awake? You're still up for more? Yeah. No? Okay, well then we'll wrap it up. No, that's great. Who's next? Because you don't need me to have a voice tomorrow by the time we do services. Go ahead.
Okay, from Dolores Stone says, you've said that lighting candles on Shabbat are a tradition, but what can I do so I don't take this day too casually?
Okay, so I didn't say that for recently, but you must have heard me say it another time, which is fine. Okay, so, all right, let's approach it from this point of view. Traditions can be very good because they help us to find meaning or find ways to get the right mindset for different things. So traditions can be very good. We just watch out for two possible downfalls, traps. As long as your tradition doesn't do one of these two things, not a problem. I'm going to lay this out before I answer the question. So as long as it doesn't, A, be treated as if it's Torah. It's a tradition. It's something that maybe your family does or you decide to do as a tradition, and there's nothing wrong with it as long as it, A, does not be treated as if it's Torah, and B, and it doesn't interfere with Torah in any way. It doesn't abrogate it. It doesn't get in the way of it. It doesn't hamper your ability to keep something. This is all laid out in Mark chapter 7, which has nothing to do with food, has everything to do with traditions. Okay? All right, so I want to get that out there first. So that being said, I can appreciate your question because you can choose, as many people have done, to do things that help to deepen your meaning and to actually to spark your mind into a shift from the everyday week to Shabbat. Okay, some families, like my wife's family, her father would get the family together, they'd go in the living room, and he would read a verse or two, and then they would pray together as a family and start Shabbat. See, people talk about opening and closing Shabbat. There are 0 verses for this. But people have done that for centuries and centuries because it helps you to for your mind to shift from the everyday world to Shabbat. It's a day that you treat differently. It's time that's treated differently. So you need to have something to help you shift gears. Maybe you want to listen to good praise music. Maybe you want to take just some time quietly to allow your mind to clear and meditate on letting the fire, like we call this in the Orthodox, it's called hitbadadut. Just be quiet with your Creator for a few minutes to kind of put all the noise of the world aside. Maybe you want to light the candles like some do before Shabbat. Just something to remind you that when you do this, you're shifting the gears in your head. Okay, you do whatever. I don't want to just say you have to do anything. Do your own thing. As long as it doesn't get in the way of Torah, as long as you don't start acting like Yahweh said to do it. Okay? I have a problem with the Jewish prayer for lighting the candles. It says, who commanded us to light the Sabbath candles? There's no commandment to light Sabbath candles. Okay? Well, there is probably in the Talmud. And if you're going to believe the Talmud was whispered in Moses' ear, okay, but I'm just saying there's no commandment in the Torah to say to light Sabbath candles. So I'm not a big fan of that. So I say instead we could say a blessing that says that who commanded us to be lights to the world. Okay, as we light the candles. And you don't have to light candles. You can do whatever it is that helps you to make that shift. Next question.
All right, a couple of kashrut questions. From John, says, can we eat dairy with meat? And then Christina Phillips is it okay to eat? So it's okay to eat biblically clean meats, chicken, beef, etc., that aren't killed in a kosher way? That's the question. Or should we be looking for a kosher slaughtered meats?
Okay, I don't eat cheeseburgers, but that's because I don't like them. Let me do the second one first. It's easier. Okay, look, there's no scriptural description of how to kill an animal. Talmud gives you some ideas, and there is a difference between different Orthodox groups over the years that talk about how to. As a matter of fact, it became a big problem when they shifted to steel, because they didn't think you could use steel until there was steel to use. In terms of the knife, they were not using steel. So let's understand that there is no scriptural command instruction that tells you have to kill the animal this way. That doesn't exist in your scriptures. So don't worry about that part of it, and you don't have to pay the extra money to say that the Orthodox guys, oversaw what was going on. By the way, understand that unlike some places, when you see that it says it's kosher, it doesn't mean that a rabbi showed up and prayed over it. He's not praying over food. Okay? Jews don't pray over their food. Jews praise the Creator for giving them food. They don't pray over food. Okay, that's a Christian thing to do. Other groups may do that thing. It's not a Jewish thing to do. You don't see that in Hebrew in the scriptures either. Yeshua blessed the Father and broke the bread before he had the bread and the wine. Okay? Now it says he broke it and blessed it, but a Jew would understand what he did. He said the Kiddush when he had the wine. He said the Hamotzi when he had the bread. Blessed are you, Yahweh our Elohim, King of the universe, who created this food of whatever it is, whether it was the bread or the wine, etc. Okay, so they don't bless the items. Now, so like the Mashgiach, the guy who shows up at the factory or whatever to oversee, he's there to simply look and say, you're doing it according to our halachic understanding. He's there to verify there's no cross-contamination going on, that things are being handled according to their halachic understanding. He's there as a quality control person, essentially, okay? Now, so biblically kosher would be quite fine as far as I'm concerned. So eat chicken, eat beef, don't eat pork, don't eat shellfish. So just stick to the animals that you're told are food. Okay? Now the other question had to do with milk and meat. Look, in the scriptures, there's like two places, and I'm not going there, I'm looking for something else. In the scriptures, there's like two places that you see the command, it's either 2 or 3, where it says that you are, my phone thought I was giving it a command. That's really funny. Okay. Siri is pretty funny. All right. In the scriptures, like 2 or 3 places, it says, do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. All right. That happens to be, in my opinion, a literal thing. Okay? Because it's not like in a long discussion about food. He's just throwing out, don't do this, don't do that. These are things that a lot of times you see that the pagans are doing, and don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. All right. What we do have, though, is we have a point here, and, okay. My phone started lighting up on me. What we do have is chapter 18 of Genesis. And chapter 18 of Genesis is what we talked about earlier with Sarah going to make the breads, when Yahweh shows up. And Abraham clearly recognizes as Yahweh. He says, Yahweh appeared to him by the terebinth trees, and Yahweh talks to him, and he said, that Abraham looked up and he recognized, he saw them, and he ran, and he bowed down to the ground before them. And he says, let me bring a piece of bread to refresh your hearts. And then he has all the stuff going on, and Abraham ran to the herd, and he slaughters the tender calf, and he does all these things. And then verse 8, and he took the curds and the milk and the calf, which he had prepared, and set it before them, and stood by them under the tree as they ate. They're eating milk and meat together. And the Orthodox say, well, that was before Moses. Yahweh doesn't change. Stop telling me it's before Moses. Why would he do something that later he's going to tell us we can't do? Okay? So, you have to reconcile these things together. In chapter 18, Abraham lays it before him, he eats it. And that's really clear, actually, what's going on. It's curds, milk, and the slaughtered animal, the meat that he prepared. And the other one, it says, don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. Okay, so the cheese that came from Wisconsin and the beef that came from wherever, in Tennessee, somehow is not a kid in its mother's milk as you turn it into a hamburger with cheese on it. Okay? Or chicken parmesan. Those chickens could have come from one place. It's not a kid in its mother. This was rituals of paganism that were going on. They literally would cook a kid in its mother's milk as part of a fertility thing or some other thing like that. He's saying, don't do as they do. Next question. And actually, we're going to end, it's 10:30. We're going to end it real soon here. My throat's starting to hurt.
So, from Sean Earls, it says, how about blood transfusion? Is it okay or wrong?
We have had a discussion in leadership, and we have come to the conclusion that it's fine. It's one of those things that we do while holding our nose, as far as saying we're not happy to say that, but if you need a blood transfusion, you need a blood transfusion, okay?
Okay, from Myrtle Walker, says, my food bank is on the Sabbath. I've never went, but I would appreciate getting the food. I'm 72. What should I do?
I'm assuming your food bank's giving you free food. Is that correct? Okay. And the food bank is only open on Saturday? Okay. So we're trying to understand what to do with that whole thing. Look, if the food bank is giving you charity, they're just giving you handout of food, and you can only pick it up on Saturday, I'm probably going to say that's not going to be a problem. Okay? To go and receive food. Look, all of you come to services and you bring food, and we have people show up and they eat it too. So as long as you're not doing any kind of commerce, and nobody's going to think you're doing commerce, I don't think it'd probably be a big deal for you to go and, as the poor, and to just pick up the food, okay, at the food bank. You're not doing shopping, you're not doing business, you're getting a donation of food. I mean, you're not even gleaning the corners of a field, you're just getting handed something that's already done. It's a gift. If it's anything more than what I just said, then I wouldn't do it. And I first and foremost would try to find out if there's any way you can pick it up Sunday or some other time. I mean, still try to avoid it. But if that's the only time it's open, and you are, 72 and you need the help and you need the food, I'd say go get the food. Okay? Anything else?
There's a few, but I think they'd be very long. So, I would tell them to just come back on Sunday.
Are we doing this again Sunday?
Yes.
Yes, we are. Okay, we'll just hold those questions till Sunday. Why would I do that to myself? I scheduled it twice. A glutton for punishment. Okay, you can get one more in there. Can you wait till Sunday, or you want to just squeeze this one in?
It's up to you. I can wait.
All right, let's just wait then. If you can remember your question, we'll just wait. It's 10:30. It's kind of right on a decent number to stop, and that can work. I hope this was a blessing to everyone. We've gone 3 hours, so that's pretty good. All right, so let's go ahead and close this up in prayer. Somebody raise their hand. All right, let's give it to George.
Abba Yahweh, we thank you for Shabbat. We thank you for bringing us here today to be in fellowship with one another, to listen to our rabbi, to take in and soak in and absorb everything that we're called to keep reaching for where you want us to be and leading us. So we give you the praise and from our deepest parts, we thank you for this day and this feast that you brought us. And with all of my heart, I give you thanks and praise in the name of your Son, Yeshua. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. All right, have a good rest of your evening as we're now into Shabbat, nice and solid, and then we'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget, we do have scripture reading in the morning, and because we still have more of Deuteronomy to do. All right, Laila Tov.